Chapter 987. This vast land was originally the homeland of my Ghost Axe clan. However, it is now barren. There are only desolate mountains and mountains everywhere. There is no sign of human habitation. In the vast spiritual void world, there are only a few Ghost Axe clan members. I will definitely make the Spiritual Ruins royal family pay for this blood debt in blood. Chu Lien, dressed in martial arts attire, was leading a sturdy horse in front of a group of tall mountains and steep ridges. His junior sister, Ming Xiao, sat on the horse and was also looking at the barren hills shrouded in clouds. Vaguely, one could see the silhouettes of some pavilions and palaces. The closer they got, the more they realized that those pavilions and palaces were actually very dilapidated and barren. Many places had already turned into ruins, and no one knew when they had been destroyed. Vines drooped and moss grew. Miasma filled the air. Ghost Axe clan? Could young Master Chu Lien be a member of the Ghost Axe clan? I heard that the Ghost Axe clan has always been terrifyingly talented in forging weapons. All the divine weapons and Dao weapons here were forged by the Ghost Axe clan. Behind Chu Lien and Ming Xiao were the Ghost Emperor. The Spirit Emperor, who was also riding a snow-white steed with a veil covering his face, couldn't help but ask with a surprised expression on his face. There were many maids and guards beside her. They were powerful and made her look like a young miss of a large family who was out training. She had indeed left the palace this time to go straight to Chu Lien and find out the secrets on him. However, in order to not arouse Chu Lien's suspicion, the Ghost Emperor thought of an excuse of an accidental meeting. They had met on the way, and the place they were heading to was in the same direction. Of course, Chu Lien didn't know that the Spirit Emperor had sent people to watch his every move. He did not pay much attention to the Ghost Emperor's wording. In his opinion, the Ghost Emperor's cultivation was only at the mortal realm, and her subordinates were not that strong. Now that he was about to touch the threshold of the immortal Tao, he was not worried about the Ghost Emperor's schemes. He was in a rather joyful mood. He was pleasantly surprised by the unexpected meeting of a beauty and also the joy of improving his cultivation. The reason he had come to the old haunt of the Ghost Hatchet clan this time was to use the noble orb to absorb and condense the remnant karmic luck of this place. According to the function of the Sphere of Great Wishes, it could capture the illusory chi of heaven and earth and condense the best energy for Chu Lien's cultivation. It would allow him to achieve very high achievements in the shortest amount of time. However, the process of absorbing luck was not safe. One had to be vigilant at all times and could not relax. Some powerful orthodoxies and clans had Dharma artifacts or legacy weapons that were specially used to suppress fate. Once they realized that someone had stolen their fate, they would be enraged and would send people to investigate and kill them. Although Chu Lien's strength had increased rapidly, he knew his limits. He knew that he was definitely not a match for those large clans. Once he was captured, the secret of the noble sphere might not be able to be kept. The sphere of noble aspirations was mysterious and mysterious. It was the final crystallization of an incomparably ancient and powerful civilization. However, in Chu Lien's opinion, they did not have any means to help him fight his enemies. At most, they could only be considered as auxiliary tools. Therefore, he had to be careful and not expose the existence of the noble orb. In the end, after much thought, he found a suitable location, which was the Ghost Hatchet clan's former clan land. At the same time, it was also the homeland where he lived when he was very young. Originally, this was a flourishing sacred land. Palaces and pavilions were everywhere. Immortal mountains were majestic and ancient peaks were tall. There were also many small worlds and dimensions. However, following the conscription of the Spiritual Ruins royal family, a large number of Ghost Hatchet clan members were forcefully taken away and lost the power to protect this place. And this place gradually became barren. Later on, it was plundered by the other clans and factions and gradually turned into a wasteland. However, as long as the Ghost Hatchet clan was not extinct from this world, then the clan land would still nurture vitality and luck. Chu Lien had rushed over this time because he wanted to use the remnant luck of the Ghost Hatchet clan here to help him cultivate. He walked at the front and nodded. To be honest, Miss Huang, I am indeed a member of the Ghost Hatchet clan. My parents were summoned by the Spiritual Ruins royal family and brought into the palace. They said that they were going to repair the ancient array, but in the end, they disappeared without a trace. I suspect that they have already been killed by the Spiritual Ruins royal family and have gone to the netherworld. So many years have passed, and there has been no news about them, so I don't hold any hope. When he spoke of this, he could not help but show great pain and hatred on his face. He might have been young when this happened, but the memory was still fresh in his mind, and he would not forget it. Ming Xiu's eyes dimmed as she sat on the horse. She also remembered what happened to her parents. The sovereign Ling frowned slightly under her veil. Her expression was slightly unnatural, but she soon recovered. Of course, she knew about this. Not only did she know, she had also personally given the order. However, the Spiritual Ruins royal family's summoning of the Ghost Hatchet clan and the Heavenly Craftsman clan to repair the ancient array was actually the decision of the progenitors. It was not something she could decide. The sovereign Ling could not bear to see this happen and suggested to the progenitors to change to a better method. However, no one bothered with her and only asked her to do as she was told. She could not do anything about it. She still had to bear the crime of being a scapegoat and be cursed by all living beings. After all, the Spiritual Ruins royal family was about to reach the place where the new true world was, which was the current true mountain and sea world. They had to prepare the grand, welcoming rune beforehand and start the grand ritual. The Ghost Hatchet clan and the Heavenly Craftsman clan had great talent in rune casting, so they were the most suitable to build and maintain the rune. Besides, the grand ritual required the sacrifice of hundreds of millions of lives. With their life essence as a guide, the coordinates of the Spiritual Ruins true world would be brought here. Once this matter spread out, it would definitely have a great impact on the Spiritual Ruins royal family's rule. That was why the progenitors of the Spiritual Ruins royal family would not allow the Ghost Hatchet clan and the Heavenly Craftsman clan to leave. They would leak the news and cause unnecessary chaos and panic. During this period of time, the Spiritual Ruins royal family is still summoning the Ghost Hatchet clan and the Heavenly Craftsman clan to build the ancient array. It's a pity that I don't have enough power right now, or else I would definitely lead all the races to revolt and overthrow the Spiritual Ruins royal family so that we can return peace to this world. Chu Lien led his horse and walked at the front. When he spoke, his eyes were bright and filled with determination. His words were firm, and there was an unconcealable righteousness in them. If there was anyone else around at this moment, they would definitely look at him with admiration, thinking that he was proud and determined and would definitely become someone great in the future. The Spirit Emperor cast him a glance. She did not know what gave Chu Lien the confidence to speak like that. After all, even she, the Spirit Emperor, did not know how many Dao realm progenitors there were in the Spiritual Ruins royal family. She did not know how strong each Dao realm progenitor was. The Ghost Hatchet clan and the Heavenly Craftsman clan might have been huge clans in the Spiritual Ruins true world in the past and had a deep foundation, giving birth to Dao realm existences before. However, things were different now. Their kismet was weak and their powerful experts had retired. Only a few people were left, so who would dare to go against the orders of the Spiritual Ruins royal family. But then again, as a variable, Chu Lien did indeed have the possibility to do so. However, if he was too strong, he would break easily. With his current strength, if others heard what he said, it would be easy for him to bring disaster to himself. Dao realm existences had reached a stage where their cultivation base could reach the heavens and earth. They could sense any abnormalities beforehand and nip the disaster in the bud. The Spirit Emperor was dissatisfied with the progenitors of the Spiritual Ruins royal family and had resentment towards them. However, she was the Spirit Emperor of the Spiritual Ruins royal family. What she considered was the interests of the spiritual ruins royal family. She admired Chu Lian's boldness and guts. In fact, she was even considering whether she should be generous and spare his life after learning about his variable secret. The actions of the spiritual ruins royal family are indeed not tolerated by the heavens. They have already angered the heavens, and they will suffer retribution sooner or later. Young Master Chu Lian, you don't have to worry too much. Who knows, your parents might just be trapped somewhere right now, and their lives might not be in danger. The Spirit Emperor spoke with a much gentler tone. During this period of time, the Ghost Hatchet clan and Heavenly Craftsman clan, recruited by the Spiritual Ruins royal family, were not in danger, as long as they were obedient. Right now, they were actually imprisoned somewhere. After all, they were required to maintain and repair the formation as well as the grand ritual when the time came. Although Gu Changa's arrival had stopped the Spiritual Ruins royal family's plan to descend into the true mountain and sea world. However, the grand plan to receive the true Spirit Ruins world had never stopped. When Chu Lian heard this, he thought that the Spirit Emperor was comforting him. He shook his head and said, "Miss Huang, you don't have to comfort me. I have already accepted reality. Master is an old friend of my parents. He has long since received news of their deaths." The Spirit Emperor was slightly surprised. Among the people she sent out, no one had found out that Chu Lian had a master. She could not help but be more cautious. Soon, they went over the mountain in front of them, and Chu Lian finally approached the homeland of the Ghost Hatchet clan. His emotions were complicated as he stood on the mountain and looked at the dilapidated buildings in front of him. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. The once prosperous scene had long since disappeared. Right now, only broken walls, vines, moss, and broken halls were left, along with burnt beams and pillars were left. "Senior brother, is this where you lived when you were young?" Mingxiao could not help but ask as she sat on the horse. She looked at the ruins curiously. She did not know why her senior brother would come here on the way. Could it be that he wanted to pay homage to his childhood? The Spirit Emperor was also slightly surprised, but she did not say anything. She stared at Chu Lian's back, wanting to know what he was planning to do. She was worried that if she attacked Chu Lian, she would trigger a calamity in her fate and suffer an inexplicable backlash from her kismet. Chu Lian was not stupid either. He would not tell her his intentions directly. The noble ball was his greatest secret and guarantee for his rise to power. How could he easily tell others about it, even if that person was his junior sister? Even though Chu Lian and the Spirit Emperor conversed happily during their few encounters and felt as if he had met a confidant, the Spirit Emperor's background was unknown. While Chu Lian had a good impression of her, it was not to the point where he trusted her completely. He was still considering how their relationship would progress in the future. "Before I left my homeland, I accidentally left behind a very important thing that my parents left for me here. After so many years, I don't know if it's still here. This time, I came here on the way because I wanted to look for it again and see if I can find that thing. It means a lot to me." Then, Chu Lian looked a little regretful as he explained, "I see. Shall I help you look for it? Tell me, what kind of thing is that?" Mingxiao did not doubt Chu Lian's words. Instead, she wanted to help him. Chu Lian shook his head. "There are too many poisonous miasma insects here. Junior sister, you should stay here obediently. This will save me a lot of trouble." Mingxiao's face turned pale at the mention of poisonous miasma insects. She was clearly afraid. The Spirit Emperor did not believe Chu Lian's words. However, as long as she was here, she would naturally be able to see Chu Lian's intentions. Hence, she was not in a hurry. "Why don't I send some people to help young Master Chu Lian look for it? This place is indeed a little big. I don't know how long it will take for you to find it alone." However, she still said this. Chu Lian waved his hand and said, "Miss Huang, there's no need for you to help me. As long as I can sense the existence of that thing, It will be useless even if you send people to help me. Providence was an illusory thing. Unless one specialized in cultivating providence or had extremely terrifying strength, one would not be able to sense the existence of providence. The reason why Chu Lian could sense the existence of providence was because of the ball of great wishes. Hearing this, the Spirit Emperor did not say anything else. She waved her hand and signaled for the maids and subordinates to stop. Very soon, Chu Lian turned into a ray of light and rushed towards the ruins ahead. Mingxiu and the others were waiting for him at the mountain top. The Spirit Emperor returned to the carriage and closed her eyes to rest. She also sensed Chu Lian's movements. However, what surprised her was that after Chu Lian disappeared from her sight, his aura also disappeared into thin air. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. It seems that he does have a treasure on him that can conceal him from the heavens. Even his aura is difficult for me to figure out. It's really amazing. The Spirit Emperor's eyes revealed a strange look. Just as she was thinking about how to make a move to be absolutely safe, a series of messages suddenly reached her ears from a faraway place. What? My lord has left the palace and is coming to find me personally. The Spirit Emperor's originally calm expression changed greatly. She became very uneasy and incredulous. She did not dare to believe her ears. Chapter 988. The Spirit Emperor sat cross-legged in the middle of the carriage, and his expression suddenly changed. She clenched her fists tightly. Didn't he say that he would be in seclusion for a period of time and asked me not to disturb him? Why did he suddenly leave the palace and look for me personally? She felt uneasy as she recalled Gu Changa's unfathomable strength that even the White Bone Ancestor King and the other patriarchs were wary of. She did not dare to have any bad thoughts in front of Gu Changa. The Emperor Ling did not believe that Gu Changa would look for her personally for no reason. There was a high chance that he had sensed something unusual. After all, the existence of variables went against fate. The methods of those in the Dao realm were even harder to predict. It was normal for them to catch a glimpse of the changes in fate. At the thought of this, she felt even more uneasy. She might get into big trouble if she did not handle this matter properly. Putting aside how she was going to explain to Gu Changa, even the patriarchs would be severely punished if they knew that she did not report this matter to them. The Emperor Ling did not doubt the ruthlessness and coldness of those old fellows. At their level of cultivation, they had long disregarded their bloodline and seniority. If it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to go further, she did not believe that those old fellows would be willing to pay such a price for the sake of continuing the spiritual ruins world. No matter what, I have to calm this lord down first. He must have come to me personally because of this. I was too careless back then. I thought that he would be in seclusion for a long time. That was why I left the palace and came here to get Chu Lian's supreme treasure. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through the Emperor Ling's mind, but she soon regained her composure. She stood up and left the carriage, intending to welcome Gu Changa at the top of the mountain. As for how she was going to explain it, that would depend on the situation. She was also feeling uneasy. Gu Changa had been very calm and natural during this period of time. However, he was an existence that could decide the life and death of the spiritual ruins royal family with a single thought. His emotions were not something that she could guess. Miss Huang Mingxiu, who was also at the top of the mountain, was surprised when she saw the Emperor Ling walking out of the carriage. This place was filled with miasma and poisonous insects. Even she wanted to find a place to hide. A noble lady like Emperor Ling would not be able to tolerate such an environment. However, she was willing to stay here and wait for senior brother Chu Lian to return. 763, she had a good impression of Sovereign Ling because of how loyal and righteous he was. In particular, his manner of speech was polite, decent, and generous, and he was very well-mannered. With one look, one could tell that he came from a big family. The Spirit Emperor glanced at Mingxiu and thought for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "I'm here to welcome someone." Miss Mingxiu, you don't have to worry. Mingxiu stared blankly for a moment, but she didn't ask too much. She watched as Ling Huang's silhouette disappeared, and she walked towards the other side of the mountain. She could only withdraw her gaze and look at the ruins on the other side. What exactly is senior brother looking for? I've never heard him talk about these things before. She couldn't help but mutter. The spirit emperor came to the other side of the mountain alone. He did not bring any of his subordinates or maids with him. She raised her head and looked in the direction of the sky. She could faintly feel a wave of fluctuation descending. Wang. At this moment, the sky blurred and a mirror appeared. It pierced through the endless space and time. A tall and handsome young figure walked out of it. It was Gu Chang'e. Behind him was Ancestor King White Bone, who was dressed like an old servant, and Lu Mei, who was the one who sent the message to the Spirit Emperor. "Greetings, my lord!" The Spirit Emperor hurriedly put away the distracting thoughts in his mind and greeted respectfully. She was wearing a veil, and her hair was like a waterfall. Her skin was as smooth as jade, and she looked like a flawless jade fairy. Gu Chang'e nodded slightly and glanced at her. He descended from the sky and said, "Originally, there were some things that I wanted to ask you to do. However, I didn't expect you to have already left the palace. I didn't take the initiative to look for you. Will it affect your matters?" Ancestor King Whitebone and Lu Mei followed behind him respectfully. As the Spirit Emperor's trusted aide, Lu Mei looked at her somewhat worriedly. However, Ancestor King Whitebone had a faint smile on his face, causing the Spirit Emperor's heart to sink. When she heard Gu Chang'e's words, she felt a chill run down her spine and hastily said, "How could that be? For my lord to personally look for me is my honor. How could it affect my matters? I don't know what my lord wants me to do." She felt that Gu Chang'e's words had a hidden meaning. He definitely did not look for her purely because he had something to tell her. Seeing that the Spirit Emperor seemed to have some sweat on his forehead, Gu Chang'e just smiled casually and said, "You don't have to be so nervous. I've said before that in front of me you can act as usual. As for why I'm looking for you, I'll tell you later." The existence of an anomaly was something that could be encountered, but not sought. Even among those true worlds with a deep foundation and countless eras of inheritance, it was very difficult for an anomaly to appear. An anomaly was a contradictory existence that defied common sense. They were not affected by one's natural talent. Their achievements after birth were measurable and unpredictable. The birth of an anomaly was something that happened after birth. In essence, they obtained some sort of heaven-defying object, supreme treasure, or some sort of inconceivable, unfathomable, or indescribable change. When he was in the Dao Chang True World, Gu Chang'e had appointed Anaichen as the anomaly and let him take the position of Dao Child. He had also helped him to hide the secrets of the heavens. A large part of the reason for this was because the anomaly was not tolerated by the Tao of Heaven. They were destined to experience many twists and turns, as well as countless sufferings and tribulations. However, an anomaly could carry an incomparably large amount of kismet with them. In the end, they could comprehend the mysteries of the world, the mysteries of the universe, and understand everything, reaching a level that ordinary people could not imagine or hope to reach. However, the tribulations and tribulations along the way were not something that could be easily overcome. Gu Chang'e had originally intended for Anaichen to be groomed as an anomaly by the Dao Chang True World. His true goal was to let Anaichen become a true anomaly and endure all the sufferings and tribulations so that his future path would be smooth. This time, Gu Chang'e was rather surprised to run into someone who seemed to be an anomaly in the royal family of the Ruins of Spirit. An anomaly usually carried supreme treasures and terrifying kismet with them. They might experience countless twists and turns and tribulations, but in the end, they would be resolved and there would be no danger. Many of the disasters would be resolved along the way, and it was rare for them to die along the way. The safest way to deal with an anomaly was naturally to scheme and scheme. Snatching by force was only to disturb fate and cause a backlash in the unseen world. This was somewhat similar to the child of Kismet. Sovereign Ling did not dare relax in the slightest because of Gu Changa's words, but she still braced herself and said, "Yes, sir." Gu Changa cast her a glance, but did not say anything. Sovereign Ling led the way. Her expression changed a few times, but in truth, she had already guessed Gu Changa's goal for coming. "Sir, did you come for that item as well?" Soon, many thoughts flashed through her mind, but she still made up her mind and asked. When Gu Changa noticed the existence of the anomaly, she might not have a share in that supreme treasure. Sovereign Ling had thought about this very clearly. That was why, instead of hiding it, it was better to say it openly. She might even be able to obtain Gu Changa's recognition. At that time, even if the progenitors knew about this, they would not dare to say anything against her. Besides, with Gu Changa's abilities, he might already know everything, but he did not ask. When he heard this, Ancestor King Whitebone narrowed his eyes. He was actually very interested in this kind of thing. If not for Gu Changa being here, he would have grabbed Sovereign Ling and directly interrogated her. "Oh, what is it?" Gu Changa walked behind him at a leisurely pace and smiled faintly when she heard this. He was not surprised by Sovereign Ling's reaction. She was a smart woman and naturally knew what to do at this time. She wanted to obtain the supreme treasure alone, and did not mention it to any of the progenitors. From this, one could see her ambition. Seeing that Gu Changa was not angry, Sovereign Ling sighed in relief and said, "To tell you the truth, sir, I left the palace and came here alone to obtain a supreme treasure. Although I am not very clear about what it is now, but I am sure that the supreme treasure is extraordinary and can transform an ordinary person into an anomaly." She didn't dare to hide anything and honestly told him everything she knew. With Gu Changa's means, she did not expect to hide anything from him. A supreme treasure that can transform an ordinary person into an anomaly. Hearing those words, Ancestor King Whitebone's expression changed. He seemed to be very shocked, and his breathing suddenly became a lot more rapid. At his level, he naturally knew a lot of things. There were very few things that he coveted and yearned for like this. At this moment, he also understood why Sovereign Ling left the palace alone. With such a supreme treasure in front of them, who would not have thoughts of snatching it? Sovereign Ling's trusted aide, Lu Mei, was confused. Although she was an immortal king, she did not know what an anomaly meant. A supreme treasure? Gu Changa seemed to have understood something. After all, the Spirit Emperor was a Dao realm cultivator. His judgment couldn't be wrong. From the looks of it, this anomaly should have been born not too long ago. If it was an anomaly that had grown up, it would be very difficult to deal with. Such a person naturally had extremely high intelligence and could easily see through and understand the dangers and disasters in the unseen world. Yes, but I encountered it by accident. After coming into contact with it several times, I was able to confirm this matter. My lord, you should also know that the existence of anomaly is unfathomable. It is difficult to determine one's fate. If you forcefully take action, you may incur some unpredictable calamity. The gains do not make up for the losses. That is why I decided to take things slowly, Sovereign Ling explained as she walked. She also mentioned some of the things she knew about Chu Lian. She had already given up on the idea of obtaining that supreme treasure. Instead, she thought that it was possible to obtain Gu Changa's favor. It was also a wise choice to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. Gu Changa only nodded as he listened. Forcefully seizing an anomaly was the same as disrupting one's fate. It would indeed incur some unseen calamity. For a Tao realm existence, these calamities were even more terrifying. It was likely that the heavenly blight tribulation would descend earlier. If one did not have the corresponding strength, they would surely be turned to ashes. However, if one was strong enough, they would naturally be able to ignore these so-called calamities. There was no need to worry too much. This guy named Chu Lian has yet to mature. Even if he possesses a supreme treasure, I'm afraid he won't be of much use. Gu Changa pondered and decided to make a decision based on the situation. Then, have you made any progress? He glanced at Sovereign Ling and asked casually. Sovereign Ling heaved a sigh of relief after seeing that Gu Changa did not have any intention of blaming her for hiding the truth. The stone was finally put down, and the trace of uneasiness in her heart dissipated. Her tone returned to normal as she replied, My lord, I have become more familiar with Chu Lien during this period of time. I also found out some things about him under the pretense of approaching him. This guy is young and full of vigor, but he is ambitious. His goal is to overthrow the rule of the mystical ruins royal family. He has a good impression of me and does not suspect my identity. As for these, the place ahead is the former home of the Ghost Axe clan. I am not sure why he would come here. Although it is said that he is looking for a certain item of his parents', I feel that it is just an excuse. He must have other motives. The past and future of the Divergent were shrouded in fog and were not easy to deduce. Otherwise, she would not have used such a method. After hearing Sovereign Ling's reply, Gu Changa gradually outlined the image of a young, confident, and righteous man in his mind. He possessed a supreme treasure and was ambitious. If he followed the normal rules, it would be easy for him to overthrow the rule of the mystical ruins royal family and become the new generation of great emperors or saints. This so-called Divergent was actually not much different from a son of destiny. It was just that the Divergent's destiny was shockingly rich and had already undergone a transformation. While Sovereign Ling was discussing these matters, the few of them had already arrived at the mountain where Chu Lien had disappeared. Mingxiu was stunned when she saw Sovereign Ling leading such a young and handsome man over. It was as if she had seen a person in a painting walk out of the real world. Sovereign Ling saw that Mingxiu was staring at Gu Changa in a daze and was behaving very impolitely. Spirit Emperor frowned. He was worried that she would annoy Gu Changa. However, Gu Changa waved his hand and said in a gentle tone, Is this cousin the junior sister of that little brother you told me about? Sovereign Ling was very smart and immediately reacted and explained, Yes, to be honest, this is Miss Mingxiu. Chapter 989. Initially, Emperor Ling was a little worried that such an answer would cross the line. However, she quickly recovered and addressed herself as cousin. On the way to this mountain, Gu Changa didn't say what to do. Spirit Emperor just went along with him and continued to speak. This young master is Miss Huang's cousin. Mingxiu finally reacted and felt that it was rude of her to keep staring at Gu Changa. However, she still asked curiously. When Gu Changa looked at her with a smile, she shyly looked away. Emperor Ling nodded. I have something to do this time, and I'm here to wait for my cousin's arrival. I see. Mingxiu did not doubt her words and secretly sized up Gu Changa. In her opinion, since Emperor Ling was a lady from a big family, her cousin's background must be extraordinary. Then, her cousin must also have an extraordinary background. He had the divine appearance of a noble young master, and his temperament was otherworldly. He didn't seem like an ordinary person. The Spirit Emperor also smiled and said, My cousin has heard about young Master Chu Lien and is quite fond of him, so he wants to get to know him. It just so happens that we can go together this time, so we will wait here for young Master Chu Lien to come out. Mingxiu nodded and retracted her gaze from Gu Changa. It wasn't that she didn't have experience, but in this desolate place, how could she not be surprised to see such an immortal-like young man in a picture scroll? If senior brother knows about this, he will be very happy. He has great ambitions and ideals. He just needs to find some like-minded friends. Mingxiu smiled and thought that Gu Changa was like Emperor Ling. He was dissatisfied with the way the Spiritual Ruins royal family was doing and wanted to overthrow the Spiritual Ruins royal family's rule. A just cause attracts much support, while an unjust cause finds little support. Now, many forces and clans were dissatisfied with the Spiritual Ruins royal family. They had been holding grudges for a long time, but they did not have a leader. Chu Lian had said before that as long as the time was right, there would definitely be many forces supporting him to overthrow the spiritual ruins royal family and build a peaceful world for everyone. Mingxiu admired her senior brother's ambition and did not think that he was boasting. Now, as long as he made enough friends and had enough resources and connections, would he still have to worry about the future? I have already heard about brother Chu Lian's lofty aspirations from Ling Huang. I also admire a person with lofty aspirations like brother Chu Lian. The Bitter Spirit Ruins imperial family has been around for a long time. As long as there is a suitable opportunity, you will definitely be able to overthrow their rule. When Gu Chang'e heard this, he smiled faintly. With an easygoing smile on his face, he started chatting with Mingxiu. Mingxiu was not guarded against Emperor Ling and the others. At first, she was a little uneasy and nervous. However, under the guidance of Gu Chang'e, they soon began to talk about their admiration for their senior brother Chu Lian. These things were actually not that big of a deal. However, the various races were fearful of the royal family of the spiritual ruins. Even their masters were unwilling to interfere. Yet, senior brother Chu Lian was willing to stand out and fight against the royal family of the spiritual ruins. Just this alone was enough to earn Mingxiu's admiration. Furthermore, many of the things that her senior brother Chu Lian did were things that others could not compare to. Senior brother is not only ambitious, he is also far-sighted. Now he is already thinking about how to deal with the royal family of the spiritual ruins. At the mention of that, Mingxiu was energized. Her eyes seemed to be shining with admiration for Chu Lian. Gu Chang'e smiled faintly and added a few words from time to time. For example, such anomalies or children of destiny seemed to have one thing in common, which was that they had a goal and an obsession, as well as some sort of responsibility. The small ones were for themselves, while the big ones were for the sake of the world and all living beings. On the other hand, Emperor Ling did not agree. Even though Chu Lian had supreme treasures, he was still an ant in front of the entire royal family of the spiritual ruins. How dare he try to stop them with his own strength? Now that he had been noticed, it was impossible for him to grow. He did not even have a future. How could he be so naive to try to overthrow the royal family of the spiritual ruins? That was a fool's dream. Gu Chang'e looked at the ruins with his hands behind his back. Initially, he was not too bothered. However, as though he sensed something, he revealed an interested expression. Emperor Ling noticed his expression and glanced over as well. However, she did not sense anything. She could not even sense Chu Lian's aura, let alone see what was going on. At this moment, in the depths of the ruins shrouded in miasma, Chu Lian, who was pretending to rummage through the ruins, had a solemn expression. You said that you are the weapon spirit of the ball of aspirations? He was communicating with a consciousness in his mind. His expression changed a few times in disbelief. Yes, you can call me the weapon spirit, the 11th host. Given the host's current situation, it is recommended that you leave this place as soon as possible. An indifferent and emotionless voice rang out in Chu Lian's mind. Then it started communicating with him. When Chu Lian heard this voice, his heart was once again in turmoil. He tried his best to calm himself down. He did not know what was going on either. While he was searching for the remaining luck of the Ghost Axe clan, a cold and mechanical voice sounded in his mind, warning him that a great terror was approaching and for him to be careful. The sudden appearance of this voice gave him a fright. Later on, Chu Lian took some time to recover before realizing that it was the voice from the Ball of Aspirations. This voice claimed to be the weapon spirit of the Ball of Aspirations, and he was the 11th host found by the Ball of Aspirations. Before him, the Ball of Aspirations had 10 hosts. He did not expect that there would be such a weapon spirit in the Ball of Aspirations. When it recognized him as its master, he did not sense any fluctuations or changes. All sorts of thoughts flashed through Chu Lian's mind. Thankfully, he had experienced many things and witnessed the mysteries of the Ball of Aspirations. Therefore, he did not make a fuss. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by warning me that a great terror is approaching and for me to be careful?" Now, Chu Lien only wanted to know this question. He did not know that in this barren mountain range, there was only the ruins of the Ghost Axe clan. Where did this great terror come from? Could it be that it was transformed from the ancestral spirit of the Ghost Axe clan that had yet to dissipate? With his current strength that was close to the immortal Tao, could it be that he could not contend against it? The ball of aspirations' weapon spirits in different voice sounded again, replying, "It means what it says. Within a 10,000-mile radius of the host, there is an incomparably terrifying aura approaching. With your strength, it is impossible to discover it." Chu Lien was stunned at first. When he reacted, he was shocked and his scalp went numb. He only wanted to turn his head and look behind him. However, his strong willpower did not allow him to feel anything out of the ordinary. Cold sweat kept appearing on his forehead. He forced himself to calm down and communicated with the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit. "Then what should I do now? Where is that terrifying presence? Is he watching me? Could it be that he has always been living in this area? Did my arrival disturb him? Or did it come all of a sudden?" He could only pin his hopes on the ball of aspirations now. With his strength, even the other party could not discover him. If the other party wanted to kill him, it would absolutely be a simple matter. Moreover, since the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit could discover that terrifying presence, it meant that it might have a way. "Don't count on me. I am only a weapon spirit. Because of a special substance, I do not have any strength to help you. If I had not sensed that terrifying presence suddenly approaching, I would not have been startled awake. I have only seen that kind of presence on the first master. It is really inconceivable that such a presence would appear in the civilization that you are in now." The ball of aspirations' weapon spirit replied indifferently. However, when it reached the end, there were still some fluctuations in its emotions. Chu Lien noticed that it said First Master and not First Host. This should be a matter of recognition. However, now was not the time for him to consider this. Chu Lien didn't know what the noble wish orb was trying to say. He could only vaguely understand that the terrifying presence that had suddenly approached this place had extraordinary strength that was unimaginable. The first thing that came to his mind was the ball of aspirations. Could it be that the other party had sensed the existence of the ball of aspirations and suddenly arrived? Or was it just a coincidence? The ball of aspirations' existence can conceal the karma of the heavens and abandon all deduction and divination. Even if my first master was alive, he would not be able to calculate the existence of the ball of aspirations. As for you, as the 11th host, your presence is also concealed by the ball of aspirations. No one can sense your presence. Therefore, you can rest assured that the other party will not be able to hear our conversation. Although that frightening aura has disappeared, you still can't relax." The ball of aspirations' weapon spirit seemed to know what Chu Lien was thinking and explained. Chu Lien heaved a huge sigh of relief when he heard this. His mood was much more relaxed. Disappeared? Did it leave? As long as the other party did not come for the ball of aspirations, then he could rest assured. However, there was still a trace of doubt and worry in his heart. What if the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit was wrong? Did the other party come for the ball of aspirations? The environment that Chu Lien had grown up in made him somewhat suspicious and worried. Since the other party will not be able to hear our conversation, then why do you want me to quickly leave this place? Chu Lien asked. The ball of aspirations' weapon spirit only replied coldly. The ball of aspirations is a treasure that countless experts in this world want to obtain. If its existence is known by others, do you think that you can protect it with your strength? I do not think that with the host's intelligence, you can guarantee that in the eyes of those existences, you will not reveal any flaws or mistakes. Even if the ball of aspirations hides your presence, it is very likely that someone will sense something. You must know that intelligence is the most terrifying power in this world. As long as there is a trace of abnormality, you will be calculated by others. What you need to do now is to stay as far away from those people as possible. Even if they have already left, when they think about it later, they might discover something unusual. Intelligence. Hearing this, Chu Lien broke out in cold sweat. During this period of time, he seemed to have been a little too flamboyant. If someone paid attention to him, it was inevitable that they would discover something unusual. Zero, the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit, had completely reminded him, causing him to come to his senses. This was not a place to stay for long. No matter why that terrifying existence had come, he had to think of a way to leave this place as soon as possible. I was planning to find some time to refine the remnant fate here, but it seems that it is too late now. Chu Lien made up his mind, but he was still a little afraid. However, at this moment, he thought of another question and could not help but ask, as the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit, "You should not be telling me this. If the ball of aspirations is snatched away by someone else, then you can just find another host. Why are you still helping me? Why are you telling me this?" This was also the question in his heart. Since the ball of aspirations had intelligence, then wouldn't it be better to choose an even more powerful and unfathomable person as its host? Since the ball of aspirations has chosen you, then you are its current host. This is something that has been predestined. Moreover, the remaining energy of the ball of aspirations is not enough to support it to find another host. Your life is already tied to the ball of aspirations. If you die, then the ball of aspirations will also collapse and disappear. Hearing this question, the ball of aspirations' weapon spirit was silent for a moment before it explained. Chu Lien let out a long sigh of relief. This answer was not what he had expected, but to him it was not bad. Then, after tidying up his emotions, Chu Lien made sure that he would not reveal any abnormality before he walked toward the mountain. He planned to bring his junior sister, Miss Huang, and the rest away from this troublesome place. If there was a chance, he would go to other places to see if he could absorb and condense the power of fate. The remaining power of fate of the Ghost Hatchet clan was not much, so he did not feel the pinch to give it up. At this moment, on the mountain, Ming Xiao was standing on her tiptoes, looking toward the ruins. Whoosh! A streak of divine light quickly charged out from the desolate forest. It was Chu Lien, senior brother. When Ming Xiao saw her senior brother Chu Lien, a smile appeared on her face, and she hurriedly waved and shouted. However, she did not notice the somewhat shocked and abnormal expression on Chu Lien's face. Why is there an additional young man on the mountain? Who is this? Chu Lien felt that something was not right. He noticed the tall young man in white standing side by side with the spiritual emperor. He quickly reacted and quickly descended from the sky without showing any expression. May I know who this young master is? Chu Lien did not care about his junior sister's expression. Instead, he immediately looked at Gu Chang'e and asked with cupped hands. At the same time, he was paying attention to the two people behind Gu Chang'e. One was a slightly skinny old man in black robes, and the other was a charming woman. However, no matter who it was, he could not see through their cultivation. Obviously, they were stronger than his hidden strength. Chapter 990. Chu Lien was a little puzzled and confused, but he was more cautious and careful. He tried to communicate with the weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes in his mind, but the weapon spirit seemed to be in a deep sleep and did not respond to his questions. Chu Lien had no choice but to calm down and observe the situation. He did not know if the terrifying existence mentioned by the weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes was among the few people in front of him. Chu Lien noticed that the spirit emperor seemed to be very close to the handsome young man in front of him, as if they knew each other. Just now, the two of them were standing side by side on the mountain, whispering something. The black-robed old man with unfathomable strength was most likely the young man's old servant, responsible for his safety. As for that enchanting and charming woman, it was very likely that she was his maid. Looking at it this way, the young man's background was definitely not ordinary, and he was either rich or noble. When Chu Lien opened his mouth to ask, his junior sister Mingxue smiled and took the initiative to explain. Senior brother Chu Lien, this is young Master Gu. He is Miss Huang's cousin. Miss Huang is waiting here because she is waiting for young Master Gu. Cousin? Chu Lien was stunned, and his surname was Gu? This was a very rare surname. He had never heard of any family with the surname Gu. He was a little cautious. At this moment, Gu Chang'e also retracted his gaze from Chu Lien, as if he knew what he was thinking, and said with a faint smile, Ling Huang has mentioned brother Chu Lien to me before. I am also quite impressed by your great ambition. The Spirit Emperor smiled and explained, Young Master Chu Lien, you don't have to worry. My cousin has always admired people like you. He praises all kinds of people with great ambition. Previously, I casually mentioned you in front of my cousin. He was also quite impressed and felt that there was a need to meet you. This time my cousin and I have something to do and coincidentally met you. So we waited here for my cousin's arrival. Chu Lien's gaze swept across the Spirit Emperor and Gu Chang'e. He felt that the two of them did not seem to be cousins. That was because the way Gu Chang'e looked at the Spirit Emperor was simply too calm. There was not much intimacy in his eyes. This gave people a feeling of being high and mighty, as if he had been in a high position for a long time and was in control of life and death. I see. Could it be that young Master Gu is also dissatisfied with the current atrocities of the spiritual ruins royal family? Chu Lien withdrew his thoughts and asked with cupped fists, regardless of the relationship between Gu Chang'e and the Soul Emperor. The most important thing for him now was to leave this place as soon as possible. The artifact spirit of the noble sphere did not answer his question. Chu Lien guessed that the terrifying existence might have returned. The artifact spirit of the noble orb didn't dare to reveal any abnormalities, fearing that it would reveal any flaws and be discovered. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. The spiritual ruins royal family is wasting manpower and resources, causing the other races to be dissatisfied. Sooner or later, they will be devoured. Gu Chang'e was still smiling faintly. He was indeed a little surprised. When he had just arrived here, he seemed to have been noticed by something. That was why he concealed his aura later on and didn't reveal any abnormalities. Gu Chang'e guessed that it might be because of the supreme treasure on Chu Lien's body. The supreme treasure had a spirit and had already chosen its owner. The moment he arrived, it sensed something and alerted its current owner. Logically speaking, if a supreme treasure with a spirit knew that an extremely powerful existence had arrived, it would usually choose a new owner. After all, a fine bird chose a tree to nest in, and a fine subject chose a master to serve. Most of the time, it wasn't the owner who chose the supreme treasure, but the supreme treasure who chose the owner. Although Chu Lien was a little special and had an unpredictable fate, his current strength was indeed too weak. If someone snatched the supreme treasure away, he wouldn't have the strength to protect it. The reason why the supreme treasure chose to warn its owner was because there was another possibility and it couldn't choose a new owner for the time being. Or perhaps Chu Lien had obtained the recognition of the supreme treasure? The second possibility was unrealistic in Gu Chang'e's opinion. He intended to find a chance to communicate with the supreme treasure. After all, this was a supreme treasure that could turn a normal person into an anomaly. If he couldn't create it with his current strength, then its origins would definitely not be simple. When he was sizing up Chu Lien just now, Gu Chang'e was basically certain. Chu Lien's current potential had indeed surpassed the limits and could be called an anomaly. This anomaly was not like Ni Chun in Dao Chang True World. It was not an anomaly created by someone to hide the secrets of heaven and create an anomaly. Instead, it was because he had become the owner of the supreme treasure and was truly an anomaly. Young Master Chu Lien, have you found the item left behind by your parents that is very important to you? At that moment, Sovereign Ling spoke with a hint of concern and cleverly changed the topic. When Chu Lian heard this, he reacted and shook his head. I went to the place where it was most likely to have fallen and looked around, but I didn't find anything. It must have been picked up by someone a long time ago, or dropped somewhere else. As he spoke, a slightly regretful expression appeared on his face. Ming Xiao also comforted him in a timely manner. Senior brother, don't be sad. You might find out one day that the item didn't fall. Perhaps you've forgotten about it somewhere. Chu Lian forced a smile, looking as if he was not in a good mood. He might have some doubts about Gu Changa's identity, but it was not good for him to ask. It did not matter whether it was the old man in black robes or the charming woman. They were both existences he could not fight against. Then Chu Lian spoke, intending to leave this place first. He also asked where Sovereign Ling was going next. If it was on the way, then they could go together. Sovereign Ling had already sent someone to watch Chu Lian's journey and knew where he was going next, which was why he gave him the name of a place. That's great. Miss Huang can go with us again. Ming Xiao cried out happily. Chu Lian had quite a good impression of Sovereign Ling. It was pretty good for him to be able to travel with a beauty. It was just that he could not figure out the relationship between Gu Changa and Sovereign Ling. Not only did the two of them ride in the same carriage, Sovereign Ling was half a step behind when they got on the carriage, allowing Gu Changa to get on first. Chu Lian noticed this detail and became even more curious about Gu Changa's identity. Moreover, Sovereign Ling seemed to be very respectful and fearful of the old man in black robes. Since she was his cousin, then logically, Sovereign Ling and Gu Changa should be of similar status. But why was there still a hierarchy? It's a pity that the weapon spirit of the Sphere of Noble Wishes doesn't care about me right now. Otherwise, I could ask it and hear its opinion. Chu Lian mounted his horse and followed at the back of the group, leaving the barren mountain. He did not think that Gu Changa could be the terrifying existence that the spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes had mentioned. In his eyes, the possibility of the old man in black robes and the charming woman was higher. There was actually a space in the carriage, and it was not as narrow as it looked from the outside. Gu Changa sat cross-legged on a praying mat with a pensive look on his face. Sovereign Ling was kneeling in front of him, boiling tea. She did not dare disturb Gu Changa's thoughts. There were runes in this space that isolated all senses and deductions. Even those in Dao Realm would find it difficult to see what was going on inside. How is the army that has been recruited? Gu Changa seemed to have returned to his senses. He swept his gaze toward Sovereign Ling and asked, "The progenitor and the others have already sent an order. The powerful warriors of the various great 1,000 worlds have come in response to the order. They will gather in the next few days," Sovereign Ling said respectfully. Even now, she still did not know which true world Gu Changa was planning to attack. If it was the true world that they had their eyes on beforehand, they would not have sent such a large army. The true spiritual ruins world might not be a very powerful ancient true world in the vast expanse, but its foundation was not to be underestimated. It was more than enough to sweep through a normal true world. However, she did not dare to ask too much about this matter. Gu Changa nodded, his gaze falling on Sovereign Ling's veiled face. He smiled faintly and extended his hand, as if intending to take off her veil. Sovereign Ling froze in the middle of boiling tea. Her movements became stiff, and she did not even dare to move. My lord, she was a little afraid. She did not understand Gu Changa's sudden action, and her voice trembled slightly. She did not want to become Gu Changa's subordinate or a human cauldron. Besides, Gu Changa had said before that he was not interested in her. "I don't like people being secretive in front of me. You don't have to be nervous. It's more pleasing to the eye this way." Gu Changa was still smiling faintly. He did not care about her nervousness and uneasiness, and just took off her veil. Sovereign Ling heaved a sigh of relief. However, for some reason, There was a strange feeling in her heart that made her face burn. This was the first time in her many years of cultivation that she felt this way. She could not help but look up at Guchanga, then quickly retracted her gaze. Usually, when I leave the palace, I will wear a veil and almost never show my face to others. I don't mean to be disrespectful to you, Sovereign Ling explained softly. However, Guchanga acted as if she did not hear her words. She looked out of the carriage and casually said, I know you are afraid and worried. I also know that your clan should be very curious right now. You want to know my origins and my plans. Even more so, you want to know why I asked you to gather an army. Hearing this, Sovereign Ling quickly discarded the messy thoughts in her mind and listened attentively. She did not know why Guchanga suddenly said this to her. Usually, Guchanga was very calm and did not speak much to her or to the patriarchs of the spiritual ruins. But now, it seemed like something had suddenly touched his heart. Your strength is unfathomable. It would be difficult for you to find an opponent in the entire vast expanse world. We of the spiritual ruins world do not want to be destroyed and buried in the long river of time just because we resist you. Sovereign Ling carefully considered her words before replying. She had actually obtained some information from the patriarchs. The patriarchs all believed that Guchanga was a taboo lord who wandered in the vast expanse. Wherever he went, that place would become a forbidden zone. After an endless amount of time, he woke up again and wanted to find a suitable true world to devour and recover his chi and blood. If the spiritual ruins world resisted, they would become food and be devoured by him. Those who obey will prosper, and those who defy will die. Your spiritual ruins clan is indeed very smart. You are also very smart. However, I have always felt that instead of being feared, it is better to be revered. It is truly lonely at the top. Guchanga smiled. Sovereign Ling did not know why, but she felt a sense of loneliness from his words. It was as if he was sitting alone in the ninth heaven and looking down on all living things without a single person beside him. She considered her words again and said, But I feel that you would not do such a thing. You have a greater goal. The spiritual ruins world is not worth mentioning in your eyes. Is that so? I did not expect that you would think so. Guchanga smiled and did not express his opinion. Sovereign Ling felt that their clan seemed to have a deep misunderstanding and fear of Guchanga since the beginning. Now that she had come into contact with Guchanga, she could feel the change in their state of mind even more. This lord should have experienced many things. He might seem young, but in truth he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. All his actions seemed to be for something. Otherwise, Guchanga would not have said those words to her as if something had touched his heart. At this moment, Emperor Ling felt much more relaxed, as if a great deal of pressure had been lifted from his shoulders. He no longer had to be so fearful when speaking to Guchanga, nor did he need to carefully consider his words. Guchanga noticed a change in Sovereign Ling's state of mind at this moment. There was still a faint smile on his face. However, there was no change in his heart. It was as still as an abyss. Since he wanted to let the name of the Heaven Crusading Alliance resound throughout the vast expanse, he definitely had to come up with a good name and a legitimate goal. Sovereign Ling in front of him gave him a good opportunity. These words that seemed to be from the bottom of his heart seemed to be closing the distance between him and Sovereign Ling. In reality, it was to perfect his image in the hearts of Sovereign Ling and the others. It was to plant a seed in advance. The Heaven Crusading Alliance sought to conquer the heavens. It would definitely bear terrifying karma and suffer endless calamities. Why was he willing to establish the Heaven Crusading Alliance and conquer the heavens for no reason? As the Demon Lord, he roamed the vast expanse. Had he encountered an existence from the origin world and died? Was that why he had a grudge? That was not enough. Everything before the Demon Lord was a blank. Who knew? Therefore, it was natural that they would have to trace back to his distant past. As for what past it was not important. It was enough to let people understand his past and the reason behind it. It was because of this past that Gu Changa made a great ambition to establish the Heaven Crusading Alliance. He wanted to mobilize the forces of the entire vast expanse to conquer the heavens and conquer the heavens. Gu Changa always liked to do things without leaving any loopholes. There must be a cause and an effect. Now he was going to perfect the cause in advance for this effect. Chapter 991. My lord, have some tea. Emperor Ling respectfully poured Gu Changa a cup of tea in front of him. After hearing his words, she also felt that the distance between the two of them seemed to have shortened a lot. She was no longer as fearful as before. She had also heard of some things. Those existences who had established their own forbidden zones had personally experienced the destruction of their homeland and the loss of their home. They had then witnessed their friends and family members die one after another, buried in the past, but they were powerless to do anything about it. Compared to a madman like the ancestor king of White Bones, who had abandoned everything and abandoned all emotions, the so-called master of a forbidden zone was more like a lonely soul drifting in the vast expanse for the sake of an obsession that could not be erased. Some did it for revenge, some did it for the sake of reviving their family members, and some did it for the sake of repeating the long river of time and reversing the past. The two seemed the same, but in fact they were fundamentally different. A madman, like the ancestor king of White Bones, could give up anything in order to survive. He was willing to work like an ox and horse in front of Gu Changa, abandoning his dignity. He no longer cared about anything, so he naturally did not distinguish. As for Gu Changa, who existed alone in the vast expanse for the sake of an obsession, his temperament was very likely to be more like a normal person. It was just that when it came to matters related to that obsession, he would do anything at all costs. After thinking through this, Emperor Ling also felt that Gu Changa was not that scary anymore. Her entire mood inexplicably relaxed a lot. When she first met Gu Changa, she completely thought of him as a monster with unstable emotions and temperamental moods. In order to recover his blood and chi, he could feed on billions of living beings and launch a dark upheaval that swept across the vast expanse. That was why she had a deep fear and dread. And now, after understanding this, she realized that she and the group of ancestors had completely misunderstood Gu Changa. You don't seem to be as afraid of me as before? Gu Changa smiled faintly and picked up the teacup. Emperor Ling also smiled and said, Previously I had a deep misunderstanding of you, my lord, but now I have thought it through. The fear and dread I had for you was actually caused by the ancestor king of White Bones' actions when he boarded the ship. 16. As soon as the White Bone ancestor king boarded the ship, it immediately attacked and killed one of the ancestors, devouring him until there was nothing left. The Spirit Emperor was naturally aware of this, which was why she was equally fearful of the ancestor king of White Bones. Even a grand ancestor was helpless against an existence like the White Bone monarch. Gu Changa was countless times more terrifying than the monarch. In the beginning, how could she not be afraid when facing such an existence? Especially the group of patriarchs, they were still hoping that she would curry favor with Gu Changa. It was just that she had a strong temperament. Most of the time, she maintained her composure on the surface. Gu Changa took a sip of tea and didn't comment. He knew that he had achieved the effect he wanted. Fearing power, but not virtue, was not the best way to control one's subordinates. It was impossible for him to do everything himself. His words had planted a seed in the Spirit Emperor's heart, making it easier for her to work for him in the future. A Dao Realm trusted aide who was also quite talented. If he gave her some eternity substance or longevity substance, she might be able to break through to a higher level and be on par with the ancestors of the mystical ruins royal family. The current Gu Changa lacked some capable subordinates. Although the ancestor king of White Bones was respectful to him, he was also fearful of his strength. He was an old monster with empty eyes and wouldn't work for him sincerely. In comparison, the Spirit Emperor was much more tender and innocent. My lord, you are different from the ancestor king of White Bones. He is a true lunatic who has no scruples and is lawless. You, on the other hand, have a strong heart that won't be swayed by the outside world. The Spirit Emperor said with sincere respect. It was not that she was flattering Gu Changa. It was just that she had been in contact with Gu Changa during this period of time and what she had heard today. Gu Changa was such a person. Is that so? My strong heart? But how long can this heart of mine hold on? 1,000 years? 10,000 years? 100,000 years? Or even longer? Gu Changa smiled noncommittally. The Spirit Emperor was slightly taken aback, thinking that Gu Changa was talking about his obsession. How long can his obsession last? My lord, pardon me for asking, but can you tell me what you plan to do? The Spirit Emperor thought for a while and couldn't help but ask. If it was before, she wouldn't have dared to ask such a question even if she was beaten to death. When Gu Changa heard this, he looked at her strangely and smiled. I already said that you don't have to be nervous in front of me. I don't like cumbersome rules. Most of the time, I prefer people around me to communicate with me as equals. Just now, I just took off your veil and you were so scared. If I want to do something else, what are you going to do? In the future, you don't have to call me Lord in front of me. Just call me young master. Yes, young master. The Spirit Emperor didn't dislike this maid-like address. Instead, she was inexplicably happy. In a way, wasn't this a sign that she was closer to Gu Changa? If young master wants to do something else, I definitely won't dare to stop you. However, young master, you probably won't do that. She replied. She felt that the state of mind that she had cultivated for so many years was completely messed up at this moment. As the Empress of the spiritual ruins, she controlled the various universes and billions of lives. However, at this moment, she was like a little girl and her words were inexplicably bashful. Gu Changa smiled and said, You seem to understand me very well now. I just feel that young master won't force me to do anything. However, if young master wants me to sleep with you, all you have to do is say it. I'm actually willing. The Spirit Emperor no longer had her previous worries and fear. Now, her words were much bolder. Putting aside the difference in status and strength, Gu Changa actually fit her criteria for a partner. Let's not talk about this topic anymore. Gu Changa still smiled and waved his hand to interrupt her. Yes, young master. For some reason, the Spirit Emperor felt an inexplicable sense of disappointment and discouragement. Although she didn't dare to say that she was the #1 beauty of the spiritual ruins. In the universes that she ruled, she was definitely the most beautiful. Few women could compare to her beauty. However, Gu Changa really didn't seem to be interested in her at all. She sighed faintly in her heart and raised her eyes to look at Gu Changa. He was sipping his tea. His face was handsome and elegant, like a peerless young master who had walked out of a painting. He wasn't tainted by the world at all. Aren't you curious about my motive? Then I'll tell you now. Gu Changa put down the empty teacup. He felt that the time was about right. The Spirit Emperor should be less wary of him now. The Spirit Emperor heard this and immediately perked up. She listened attentively. She couldn't hide her curiosity as she stared at Gu Changa. I want to unify the vast expanse world. And Gu Changa also said the second half of the sentence unhurriedly. What? The Spirit Emperor was stunned. At first, she thought that she had misheard, but Gu Changa's expression didn't seem to be joking. She couldn't help but be stunned. Her mouth was slightly open, and her face was full of shock and disbelief. No one knew where the end of the vast expanse world was. No one knew how many civilizations and epochs it had nurtured and how much space and time there was. The spiritual ruins world might be considered an ancient world and wasn't weak, but in the vast expanse world it was an inconspicuous duckweed that could be crushed and drowned at any time. And Gu Changa wanted to unify the vast expanse world? The Spirit Emperor had never heard of such a thing, nor had she imagined it. It was simply a fantasy. However, all of this came out of Gu Changa's mouth. "Young master!" After a long while, the Spirit Emperor finally reacted. Her mouth was dry. It wasn't that she doubted Gu Changa's strength. It was just that this was too fantastical. No one could do it. Even the existences who had created the most powerful true worlds in the ancient legends couldn't do it. Besides, how many powerful true worlds were there in the vast expanse world? Besides the powerful true worlds, there were many powerful beings who didn't appear in the world and whose whereabouts were unknown. Perhaps there were also existences who truly stood at the end of the ninth decay. There were too many unknowns and mysteries in the vast expanse world. It wasn't something they could guess or imagine. If you can't even do this, how can you attack the heavens? Gu Changa smiled, as if he had already expected the Spirit Emperor's reaction. He wasn't surprised at all. Attack the heavens. The Spirit Emperor was once again stunned by these two words. The heavenly Tao was heartless. Before the calamity, it would punish all living beings. During this time, many true worlds would choose to fight against the heavens, and many heaven destroyers would appear. But who could truly attack the heavens? It was just a decision to fight for survival in the face of death. If it wasn't because they were too powerless in the face of the calamity and couldn't fight back, how could the so-called heaven destroyers appear in this world? And it was clear that the heaven destroyer Gu Changa was talking about was different from the heaven destroyer during the calamity. "Sir, do you plan to truly settle the heaven destroyer and destroy the heavenly Tao?" The Spirit Emperor forced herself to calm down with great difficulty, but she was still shocked. From a certain point of view, Gu Changa was an even more terrifying lunatic than ancestor Whitebone King. How could he dare to talk about this sort of thing and make it his obsession? Attacking the heavens to achieve the Tao wasn't something that could be done with great willpower and decisiveness. The true heavens were in the real world, and they were definitely not something they could touch. Gu Changa didn't care about the Spirit Emperor's reaction. He only said these things so that she could be mentally prepared. The earlier he spoke about attacking the heavens, the better. It was normal for the Spirit Emperor to be shocked and feel that it was inconceivable. When he mentioned this to Gu Wuang in the Dao Chang True World, Gu Wuang had also been shocked and in disbelief. After all, not everyone had the courage to face this, even if they only knew about it. When the Spirit Emperor saw that Gu Changa had stopped talking and was only calmly looking at the undulating mountain range outside, the Spirit Emperor gradually calmed down. The Spirit Emperor also gradually calmed down. She was no ordinary person. After the initial shock, she began to seriously consider this matter. Even she was so shocked that she couldn't say anything when she learned about this matter. It could be imagined just how shocking and inconceivable it was. Perhaps even the progenitors would be shocked and frightened if they knew about it. And yet, Gu Changa was able to speak of it so calmly and casually, as if it was a small matter not worth mentioning. "Young master, what are we going to do about Chu Lian? Should we let him continue to grow, or—" The Spirit Emperor still didn't dare mention the matter of attacking the heavens. She could only blame herself for asking just now. She quickly changed the topic and asked about Chu Lian. "Let him continue to grow. If there's a chance, I'll look for that thing on his body and have a good talk," Gu Changa said casually. Based on the current situation, Chu Lian probably didn't know the Spirit Emperor's true identity. Gu Changa was also a little curious as to what the supreme treasure on his body was. Since it was a sentient object, he would think of other ways after talking to it. If it wasn't necessary, Gu Changa didn't want to snatch it by force. After all, from the current situation, this supreme treasure was bound to Chu Lian. If he snatched it by force, it might cause unnecessary trouble and accidents. It just so happened that the royal family of the mystical ruins still needed some time to gather all the troops. At the same time, Chu Lian, who was following at the back of the group, was also feeling uneasy. Artifact spirit, no matter how he tried to communicate in his mind, the artifact spirit of the sphere of great wishes did not respond. It seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. This made Chu Lian feel very helpless. He didn't know the reason, but fortunately it didn't affect the function of the Spear of Great Wishes. His strength was slowly and steadily increasing, but he didn't dare to be too obvious, for fear that the black-robed old man beside Guchanga would notice something unusual. A few days later, he followed the Spirit Emperor and arrived at a villa called Jushin Manor. This villa was hidden in the depths of a verdant mountain. It was built in a very grand and imposing manner. There were many hangers-on, and there were people from various races. Their strength was also very mysterious, as if there was a hidden qilin in the mountains. This made Chu Lian and Ming Xiu very surprised. After that, the Spirit Emperor introduced to the two of them that this was the faction that his cousin had been secretly building. It specialized in recruiting people with special abilities to discuss how to overthrow the royal family of the mystical ruins. At the same time, he wanted to recruit people and buy horses for use in the future. When he heard this, Chu Lian was shocked and extremely excited. Wasn't this his goal and plan all along? He did not expect this mysterious cousin of the Spirit Emperor to have been planning this for a long time. It was out of his expectations. Chapter 992. The Jushin Manor was built in a grand and majestic manner, and it was hidden in the deep mountains and ancient forests. There were many formation patterns set up in the surroundings, and it was shrouded in fog. Even if one came here by accident, they might not be able to enter successfully. Both Chu Lian and Ming Xiu were astonished by the sight of the buildings. The guests here all had extraordinary auras. When they opened and closed their eyes, there was a divine light. Their qi and blood were like a boiling furnace, so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. The Spirit Emperor ordered someone to lead the way and led Chu Lian and Ming Xiu in. At the same time, she also arranged for the two of them to stay. After doing all this, she smiled slightly and quickly disappeared into the various courtyards. Senior brother, I didn't expect such a magical place to exist here. It seems like they're really recruiting all the talents in the world. I feel that everyone here has unfathomable strength. Ming Xiu's eyes were filled with amazement and curiosity as she sized up the place. After arriving here, Chu Lian also relaxed and nodded to himself. Not only were there strong men of foreign races with bare arms, there were also Taoists in Taoist robes with compasses in their hands, calculating something at all times. If not for the Spirit Emperor leading the way, they might not have found such a place. It was truly too mysterious. Furthermore, when they thought of the Spirit Emperor's words earlier on her cousin, the mysterious young Master Gu had established this place a long time ago. Didn't that mean that he had been considering whether to overthrow the rule of the mystical ruins royal family since a long time ago? That idea was exactly the same as Chu Lian's. However, Chu Lian's current strength and resources were not enough to support him in planning such things. This young Master Gu, you really trust us by bringing us here. It seems like he really admires you, cousin, Ming Xiu said happily. Chu Lian smiled and looked around, but he did not see anyone following them. He shook his head. You can't say that. This young Master Gu is too mysterious and has many experts under him. Rather than saying that he trusts us, it's more accurate to say that he thinks that we won't be able to cause any trouble by bringing us here. Even if we reveal the secret of this place, he can definitely send people to kill us. It won't affect him or cause any losses. When Ming Xiu heard this, she immediately looked unhappy and said, Senior brother, how can you think of her like that? Along the way, I haven't seen anyone treat us well. Chu Lian knew that she would be angry if he said that, but this was reality. Secretly plotting to overthrow the spiritual ruins royal family was a heinous crime that could easily lead to the execution of 9 generations of the family. If news of this were to spread and the royal family of the mystical ruins found out about it, even this mysterious young Master Gu would be in trouble. He didn't believe that young Master Gu would completely trust him and his junior sister, just based on a few words from Miss Huang. However, he couldn't be too full of himself. I feel that young Master Gu should be trying to recruit me. These capable people under him are not ordinary. Even I am unable to see through the strength of many of them. After parting ways with Junior Marshall's sister, they returned to their respective courtyards. Chu Lien first carefully looked around, worried that he would be spied on. Only then did he return to the house and close the doors and windows. At the same time, ancient banners less than the size of a palm were thrown out by him and landed in the surroundings. The banners trembled and emitted a hazy glow that enveloped the surroundings. The hazy aura spread and instantly turned the place into a blur. Even existences that were far stronger than him would not be able to spy on this place. The 8 directional cloud rain banners that I obtained from signing in through the sphere of noble wishes can prevent others from spying on me with their spirit consciousnesses. Seems like it has its uses. Only then did Chu Lien heave a sigh of relief. His experiences since childhood made him very cautious. Even though that mysterious young Master Gu didn't have any ill intentions towards him along the way, he still had to be wary of others. This was especially so because he couldn't forget what the weapon spirit of the sphere of noble wishes told him in the Ghost Axe clan's territory. It's better to be safe than sorry. This young Master Gu's background is unknown, and the black-robed old man beside him truly makes me uneasy. I have a feeling that he has been spying on me with ill intentions. Could the weapon spirit of the sphere of noble wishes be the black-robed old man beside young Master Gu that warned me? Chu Lien sat cross-legged on the bed as his expression changed. The sphere of noble wishes was his greatest reliance and secret. He couldn't let others know about it. If that black-robed old man sensed all of this and reported it to young Master Gu, would he still be able to keep the sphere of noble wishes? Weapon spirit. Thinking of this, Chu Lien began to summon the weapon spirit of the sphere of noble wishes in his mind, intending to communicate with it and ask some questions. However, the weapon spirit of the sphere of noble wishes still didn't have the slightest reaction. Ever since leaving the Ghost Axe clan's territory, it seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber. No matter how Chu Lien called, there was no response. Until now, he had used the 8 directional cloud rain banners to conceal the heavenly secrets of this place. However, the weapon spirit of the sphere of noble wishes still didn't have the slightest reaction. Could it be that some problem has occurred and it has really fallen into a deep slumber? Chu Lien racked his brains, but other than waiting, he couldn't find the slightest solution. On the other side, in a quiet and secluded courtyard, in front of Gu Chang'e, the Spirit Emperor was telling him about the Virtuous Gathering Manor. Naturally, the Virtuous Gathering Manor had nothing to do with Gu Chang'e. She was the one who secretly built it to recruit talents from all around the world. Her purpose was to monitor the world and solve some problems that the Mystical Ruins royal family couldn't solve on the surface. It was her sharp blade in the dark. As for why Gu Chang'e asked her to tell Chu Lien and the others that the Virtuous Gathering Manor was built to overthrow the rule of the Mystical Ruins royal family, all of this was to push the boat along with the current. After all, since Chu Lien wanted to be the savior of the world, saving the people from the abyss of suffering, Gu Chang'e was willing to help him. Thus, Gu Chang'e would fulfill his wish and fulfill his dream. Not only that, he could let Chu Lien accomplish all of this personally, to push the Mystical Ruins royal family down from their pedestal and establish his own dynasty, becoming the savior of the current era. Gu Chang'e could help Chu Lien lead this great drama of changing the dynasty and saving the people. After all, he wanted to have a good talk with Chu Lien about the treasure on him. Thus, the best way was to show the necessary sincerity first. Once that was done, it would naturally be easier to negotiate terms and conditions. Then, it would be better for them to discuss openly. In the Ghost Axe clan's territory, Gu Chang'e already had a plan when he sensed that the treasure had a spirit. He first restrained his aura and waited for the treasure's spirit to let down its guard before suddenly releasing his aura again. Sure enough, in this way it was completely shocked, and it hurriedly sealed off all connections and senses with the outside world and fell into a deathly silent state. Therefore, It couldn't sense the many things that happened after that, and didn't know that Gu Changa was the source of its fear. Then I'll do as you said, young master. The spirit emperor didn't know what Gu Changa's motive was, and only followed his instructions. After she left, Gu Changa's gaze deepened, and he waved his sleeve. Ripples spread out in the space in front of him and turned into a calm surface of water that reflected what was happening on the other side like a mirror. The terrifying army covered the sky and earth like locusts and flooded the Tao Chang true world. An endless army rushed out of the ancient worship of the immortal spirit civilization, as if they would never dry up. Beyond the Tao Chang true world, the world dike shuddered. Runic symbols shone like a flood and turned into ancient words that continued changing and intersecting with each other. Pillars of light shot out and shook the universe. They tore apart the laws and order, and a large amount of time fragments evaporated completely. This was an incredibly devastating battle. Both sides were fighting against each other without a care for their own lives. Corpses fell like rain into the endless darkness or turned into powder and blood on the spot. In the depths of time and space further away were existences at the level of immortal emperors fighting. The ripples of power seemed to want to split the world apart and spread from one end of the long river of time to the other. The entire river of time was illuminated. They stood in the depths of the fog, and their magical bodies had long since surpassed 100 million feet. At the instant the hand cut down, the great cosmoses were torn apart and exploded on the spot. A boundless amount of blood drowned out the great cosmoses around it. The existences in Tao Realm had yet to join the battle. They were still observing, but a battle of this level was definitely rare to see. Once the existences in Tao Realm fought, they could easily cause the endless space and time to fall into chaos. The great Tao would return to nothingness, and countless worlds and universes would be destroyed in an instant. There were plenty of figures standing tall on the ancient worship of the immortal spirit civilization. They were like ancient demonic shadows overlooking the Tao Chang true world, waiting for the right time to attack. The presences of those figures were not any weaker than the immortal emperors fighting. It was impossible for the battle to end within a short period of time. The immortal spirit civilization was still testing the waters, and the leaders of the various races in the Tao Chang true world were also watching. Gu Changa watched the battle calmly. There was not a hint of emotion on his face. However, when he noticed a battle beyond the world dike, he frowned. Nonsense. A tall and slender figure moved through the army like an invincible female sword immortal. Sword light moved through millions of leaves and let out loud clanging sounds. Her sword moved the universe and tore apart her enemies. A boundless sword aura surged and exploded. It was like a sun from the Tao of the sword that illuminated the heavens. It was incredibly powerful. Even existences with similar levels of cultivation found it difficult to withstand one of her slashes. They were beheaded, their nascent divinities disintegrated, and they exploded. For a period of time, cries of excitement could be heard from various battlefields. Beyond the Tao Chang true world, an even larger army surged towards the slender figure. Even the demonic shadows standing tall on the ancient worship noticed her and cast their gazes over. With me around, no one will be able to take half a step into the Tao Chang true world. Her voice was cold as she leaned against her sword. Her voice was ethereal and dazzling. It was not loud, but it spread through the entire battlefield. Kill! More soldiers surged towards her. Murderous aura surged into the sky and formed some sort of rune. Its might was even more astonishing. Due to her actions, the pressure on the other powerful warriors of the Tao Chang true world was greatly reduced. Gratitude and worry appeared on their faces. Gu Changa watched the scene reflected in the mirror. The expression on his calm face became even more solemn. Gu Xian, you've never let me worry. Isn't it good to follow the path I've arranged for you and walk to the peak step by step? Do you really want me to bind you to my side? Gu Changa mumbled. The figure stood tall in the universe. Her black hair and white dress were dyed in blood, but it did not affect her speed or the piercing killing intent at the center of her brows. Her originally ethereal appearance had long since changed. She looked like a female Azura bathed in blood. Her methods were also incredibly fierce. It was clear that she had been honed a lot in the battles over the years. Gu Changa cast a glance at her. When he saw that she did not do anything too arrogant and that her strength was steadily increasing, he calmed down. Gu Xian might have always acted like a fool in front of him. However, it did not mean that she was an idiot who would do something as risky as throwing an egg at a rock. The battle might have been filled with life and death dangers, but it was a suitable training for her and could allow her to grow quickly. Gu Changa understood Gu Xian's personality very well, which was why he did not say anything else. It was impossible for her to let the immortal spirit civilization's army attack the Dao Chang true world without doing anything. However, compared to the safe path he had arranged for her since a long time ago, Gu Xian, I would rather choose the path filled with thorns, danger, and the unknown. Buzz! Gu Changa swung his arm again and wiped away the scene before his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. This girl always made him feel uneasy. Gu Changa had not seen her for a long time, and he missed her a little. However, at that moment, he only wanted to hold her down and beat her up through space and time. But by the looks of it, someone has stretched their hands into the Dao Chang true world. I won't allow anyone to touch my territory. Gu Changa returned to his senses. When he sensed the Dao Chang true world just now, he had coincidentally seen another Dao realm existence. He might have left a Dao law magical body in the heaven attacking Alliance's headquarters, but it was only to prevent accidents from happening and not be able to protect the people around him. He usually sat in the depths of endless space and did not interfere with anything. If he had not sensed it just now, he would not have known that someone had stretched their hands into the Dao Chang true world. Gu Changa wanted to know who had the guts to plot against the Dao Chang true world right under his nose. I'd like to see who is scheming against me. Gu Changa's eyes were profound. In an instant, he made millions of deductions in his heart. With his mind, he moved through endless space and time to search through every inch of space and corner. When he made deductions from the past to the future, he had to find that strand of karma. When that person was scheming against the Dao Chang true world, he had formed a karmic connection with him. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for Gu Changa to make deductions about his existence. It was especially so for some Dao realm existences. They could escape all karma and not be tainted by any space-time connections. Chapter 993. Gu Changa's gaze was profound. In an instant, millions of thoughts appeared in his mind, covering every inch of space and time in an attempt to deduce who was scheming against the Dao Chang true world. In truth, when he met a man in the Dao Chang true world, he had noticed it a long time ago. However, he did not pay much attention to it at that time. He thought that it might just be an accident and that a man's appearance in the Dao Chang true world was purely a coincidence. After all, outliers were rare existences. If they were truly outliers, how could they be allowed to appear in another true world? It was especially so when a man was going through a trial of life and death that could be said to be a dream within a dream. If Gu Changa had not exposed her, she might have continued to sink into that dream that she could not wake up from and search for the truth that she could not break through. Gu Changa was not surprised by this trial. At that time, he only thought that man had a great background. There was a high possibility that she came from another true world and ended up in this place by accident. Then, she went through a trial in the Dao Chang true world. The disciples of some of the supreme true worlds in the vast expanse would often be asked to head to some desolate places to undergo trials. Only by passing the trials would they have the right to improve their status and become inner sect disciples or true disciples. They would then be able to learn the true Daos, skills, and divine abilities of the Dao orthodoxy. At that time, Gu Changa had deliberately left a mark on man's body to determine her origins, so that he could use her in the future. A man was not from the Dao Chang true world, and she was not tainted by its presence. The land she lived in was called the Savage Continent. It was originally one of the origins of the Berserkers and had no connection to her. Unfortunately, during the many cycles of life and death, she had forgotten her past and always believed that she was a Berserker. As the last princess of the Berserker tribe, she shouldered the heavy responsibility of saving the Berserkers and fighting against the immortal Tao. At the same time, she wanted to search for the truth behind the god of Berserkers' disappearance. However, she did not know that the real first god of Berserkers was watching them coldly from another true world. He treated the tribe leaders of the Berserkers who sought the truth and the other gods of Berserkers as food. Among them was naturally her current adoptive father, the tribe leader of the Berserker tribe. The elder Aman had always revered was the true master behind the first god of Berserkers. He was also one of the main culprits behind this beautiful dream. She had reincarnated 193 times in this process, experiencing death, rebirth, and the cycle repeated itself. Gradually, she had forgotten her past and her origins. When Gu Changa accidentally saw her, he did not feel much pity for her. As for this young girl with a tragic fate, he only wanted to nurture her for his own use, and in the future, she would be able to help him harvest providence. But later on, he saw a shadow of the former Chanhongi in Wild. She was stubborn, unyielding, and patient. Only then did he feel some compassion for her and point out some of the truth for her. He also carefully taught her and passed down a cultivation method to help her break through the situation. In addition, Wild had a demon heart. If nothing unexpected happened, she was destined to become a demon in the future. Gu Changa had awakened her demonic heart in advance, which could be considered as making it easier for her to take that step. If he had not pointed it out, Wild would have seen through everything sooner or later and experienced the pain. Only extreme hatred could make the demon heart truly transform and awaken. Perhaps this was also the true goal of the person who planned this trial behind the scenes. Gu Changa did not think too much about it at that time. He just thought that Wild's trial was a coincidence. Once he thought about it again, he immediately felt that the motive of the person who planned all of this was definitely not simple. Wild might have appeared in the Dao Chang true world because that person had personally sent her there. Besides that person, there is another person who is scheming against the Dao Chang true world. Could it be that there is still some secret in the Dao Chang true world that I don't know about? Many thoughts flashed through Gu Changa's mind. He connected the matter with Wild to the Dao realm ancient monk who had appeared in the Dao Chang true world. When he had turned into the demon lord and walked the world, it was purely a coincidence that he had saved Qing Yi, who was a true spirit. At that time, he had not chosen a suitable true world to live in seclusion and had not started his own plan. However, he had coincidentally seen Qing Yi leading an army to fight against the Great Liquidation, which was why he had thought of it. As for why he would get closer to Qing Yi and live in seclusion in the true mountain and sea world, he had just gone with the flow and let nature take its course. Looks like this presence is just as I expected. It does come from the 9 heavens. While Gu Changa was deep in thought, he finally captured the karmic connection and confirmed the identity of the person who had plotted against the Dao Chang true world. However, if it came from the 9 heavens, then he could ignore it for the time being. After all, he still had another chess piece in the 9 heavens that was even deeper in his plans. Gu Changa did not want to get involved with the 9 heavens for the time being, but sooner or later, he would have to take action against them. The 9 heavens might seem to have a transcendent status in the vast expanse, but there were legends about them in all the worlds. They were the legendary source of the immortal Tao. However, in Gu Changa's eyes, the 9 heavens were more like the final resting place of the incarnations of the heavens who had been destroyed during the Great Liquidation. They were rather unique. In terms of power and resources alone, they were far inferior to those supreme true worlds. Once he confirmed who had plotted against the Dao Chang true world, Gu Changa had another plan. He could take advantage of the situation, and when the time came for him to take action against the 9 heavens, it would save him a lot of trouble. Once the royal family of Spirit Ruins army was gathered, Gu Changa planned to send them to attack the Immortal Spirit civilization. The Immortal Spirit civilization might not be able to compare to the supreme civilizations, but among the ancient civilizations, it was still above average. It was definitely not something the Spirit Ruins civilization could compare to. Once they conquered the Immortal Spirit civilization's world, it would save Gu Changa a lot of time in gathering resources. After all, he was going to do something that was no different from creating a new world for the entire vast expanse. If he did not have enough resources to support it, how could he do it? Chu Lian's matter was just a small interlude. He would not put too much effort into it, in the sage gathering manner. Sovereign Ling personally came to Chu Lian's courtyard and sat in front of the stone bench. She was also following Gu Changa's instructions and telling Chu Lian that she intended to recruit him. My cousin admires you quite a bit, young Master Chu Lian. He thinks that you have the potential to be a commander and will definitely achieve great things in the future. With your help, it won't be a problem for you to overthrow the royal family of Spirit Ruins rule. Sovereign Ling spoke with a smile. Her posture was elegant and dignified. Her sleeves were wide, her hair was like the clouds, her neck was snow white, her legs were straight and slender, and her skirt dragged on the ground. Her words and actions showed the good upbringing of a lady from a noble family. Chu Lian was frowning because the artifact spirit of the Great Wish Ball did not respond to him. Sovereign Ling's sudden visit surprised him, but also made him feel much better. After all, a beauty was right in front of him, and her gentle words were indeed pleasing to the eye. Senior brother, look, even Miss Huang personally came to recruit you. It's enough to show how much young Master Gu values you. His junior sister, Ming Xiao, also said with a grin. She could tell that her senior brother had a good impression of Miss Huang. During the journey, he would occasionally pay attention to Miss Huang's actions. Go to one side. I have something to discuss with Miss Huang. Chu Lian waved his hand, asking this eyesore junior sister to leave quickly. It was rare for him to have a chance to talk to Miss Huang alone and ask her some questions. Sovereign Ling had a smile on her face, and her actions were elegant and calm. There was an entire stone table between her and Chu Lian, maintaining a distance that was neither close nor distant. After Mingxiu left, Chu Lian also sat down on the stone bench and couldn't help but say, Miss Huang, along the way, you and I can be considered to have a pleasant conversation. I believe you have some understanding of my character and know that I am not the kind of person who will be ordered around by others and depend on others. I can only say that I appreciate young Master Gu's good intentions. I also admire his actions. He has done something that I have always wanted to do, but did not have the ability to do. I hope that Miss Huang will thank him for his good intentions in front of young Master Gu when you return. Now that the artifact spirit of the Great Wish Ball did not move, Chu Lian did not know if this place was safe or dangerous. Was that black-robed old man the person he was worried about? Therefore, he could only reject temporarily and think of a way to leave this place first. Although he also wanted to achieve great things and overthrow the tyrannical rule of the Spiritual Ruins royal family, purge the world and restore peace. Young Master Chu Lian, you don't have to be in a hurry to reject. You can consider it again. Cousin's power is beyond your imagination. If you become his guest, he can give you many benefits that you can't imagine. Be it strength or resources, he can help you. Moreover, I think that young Master Chu Lian is in urgent need of some resources. Even if you don't need them, your junior sister should need them. Moreover, young Master Chu Lian should have other relatives behind him. You can consider it more, Sovereign Ling said with a smile. She was not surprised that Chu Lian would reject immediately, because this was also within Gu Changa's instructions and expectations. Her main purpose now was to inform Chu Lian that Gu Changa was interested in recruiting him. In essence, she wanted Chu Lian to trust them as much as possible and let down his guard. Chu Lien was actually a little moved when he heard this. Although he had the help of the Great Wish Ball, cultivation resources were still a huge expense. Besides that, Sovereign Ling was right. His junior sister's cultivation resources, how could he not consider these? There were other things that did not need to be said. Since Miss Huang has said so, I will think about it again. Chu Lien replied and then looked at Sovereign Ling. However, compared to this, I am more curious about the relationship between Miss Huang and young Master Gu. I think that you two are not cousins, right? Along the way, Miss Huang has been very respectful to him. Moreover, she has removed her veil in front of young Master Gu. If not for his meticulous observation, it would be difficult for him to notice these details. Every time she walked out of the carriage, there would be a slight change in the veil on Sovereign Ling's face. This meant that she had removed her veil when she returned to the carriage. In front of them, she had always worn a veil and did not show her face. Sovereign Ling was slightly stunned when she heard this. She did not expect Chu Lien to say such straightforward words. Moreover, how could he tell? She thought that her performance was good and did not show any abnormalities along the way. However, Chu Lien was right about another point. Apart from in front of Gu Chang'e, she had worn a veil the rest of the time. She was the empress of the royal family of the mystical ruins, the youngest Dao realm existence. How could she show her face in front of outsiders? Young Master Chu Lien is really observant to see through this. However, it is not convenient for me to tell you about my relationship with my cousin. I hope you don't mind. My cousin's identity and status is not something that I can reach or look up to. Although he is usually gentle, he still has to show respect. Sovereign Ling smiled and shook her head without revealing too much. Hearing this, Chu Lien was enlightened. It was similar to his guess. After all, the strength of the black-robed old man was unfathomable. However, these words coming from the mouth of a woman he had a good impression of made him feel uncomfortable and uncomfortable. Then, the two of them talked about some other matters before Sovereign Ling stood up and left to report. Chu Lien felt a little regretful. He had a good impression of Sovereign Ling, but she seemed to only treat him as a friend. Instead, she seemed to be full of respect and admiration towards young Master Gu. This feeling made him feel very jealous. However, he was not someone who cared about romantic feelings. He had more important things in his heart. Not long after Sovereign Ling left, Chu Lien was pleasantly surprised to find that the weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes seemed to have awakened and started to respond to his words. He hurriedly used the 8-directional cloud rain flag to conceal the heavenly secrets of this place to prevent anyone from spying. Then he hurriedly asked and threw all the doubts and questions he had during this period of time to the weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes. The weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes had sealed off its connection with the outside world during this period of time, so it did not know what had happened. Only after Chu Lien finished explaining everything did it understand. At that time, in the land of your clan, the terrifying aura that had suddenly disappeared returned. It seemed to have sensed that something was amiss and turned back. I was frightened and knew that something was wrong. I was worried that something unexpected would happen, so I resolutely cut off all connection with the outside world to prevent the owner of that terrifying aura from detecting it. The weapon spirit of the Sphere of Great Wishes explained. While Chu Lien was enlightened, he was also shocked and broke out in cold sweat. If not for its explanation, he would not have known how dangerous and terrifying the situation was at that time. Chapter 994. The weapon spirit of the noble sphere was like a flickering ball of light. It floated around in Chu Lien's mind, flashing with a mysterious aura. Its tone was very cold, and there were not many ripples in its voice. But now, there was a trace of fear that could not be detected. If we didn't cut off the connection with the outside world in time, we wouldn't have been able to leave that place. I've only seen such a terrifying existence on the most powerful person in the civilization that created the noble sphere. He was the first owner of the noble sphere I don't know why such a terrifying aura would appear in such a weak civilization. I just don't know if the terrifying existence you're talking about noticed our abnormality. Chu Lien could not help but ask. He was indeed afraid. If he had not left decisively or stayed for a while longer, he might have really been targeted by that indescribable, terrifying existence. However, he did not forget to ask the weapon spirit of the noble sphere about the current safety situation of the village of Worthies. He was really worried about the mysterious Sergu and the black-robed old man beside him. They gave Chu Lien a sense of fear and uneasiness. I don't think so. If they did, the owner of that terrifying aura would not have let you leave safely, the weapon spirit of the noble sphere explained. If it was really captured by that unknown existence, it could only be destroyed along with the noble sphere. The remaining energy in the noble sphere was not enough to continue binding a host. Moreover, according to the rules set by the civilization that created the noble sphere, once the noble sphere recognized an owner, it had to prioritize protecting the owner's life. Other minor details could be abandoned. As the weapon spirit of the noble sphere, it could not interfere with the noble sphere's choice of owner. At most, it could only be considered as the host's guide. Apart from that, its existence was also bound together with the noble sphere and the host. Unless it could really destroy the noble sphere, it could only follow the rules and be destroyed like the host. The weapon spirit of the noble sphere was an independent consciousness to the noble sphere. It had been through many hosts. If there were no accidents, Chu Lien should be the last host. The previous hosts did not manage to reach the level of the first host. They all died along the way. At the same time, the sphere of noble aspirations had also experienced unimaginable damage. It was almost irreversible. I've already probed this virtuous gathering manner. There's no danger that you're worried about. As for that young Master Gu, he's indeed mysterious. He should have some sort of treasure that can conceal his cultivation. I can't see through it in a short while. As for that black-robed old man, judging from the aura he revealed, he's not far from the Tao realm. To have an existence that almost stepped into the Tao realm as a servant, that young Master Gu's origin is probably not simple. I suspect that he might not be a living being from this civilization. Instead, he might have come from an even more ancient and powerful civilization. Even the inheritors of the civilization that created me might not necessarily receive such treatment at such a young age to have a being that is close to entering the Tao realm as a servant. The artifact spirit of the sphere of noble aspirations began to explain. Although it was unable to use the energy within the sphere of noble wishes, it could use its intelligence to infer and determine the strength of Gu Chang'e and the black-robed old man. To it, wisdom was indeed the most miraculous and powerful force in the world. When Chu Lien heard this explanation, he could not help but be stunned. This was a direction and possibility that he had never thought of. Artifact spirit, you're saying that young Master Gu might have come from an even more ancient and powerful civilization? That he's not from the true spirit ruins world? He could not help but ask. He was simply too shocked and found it hard to believe. If it was true, then this was the first time he had come into contact with a living being from another civilization, and in such a manner. Before this, Chu Lien had only learned about other civilizations from his master, who had adopted him. However, that was all in the ancient records. He had never thought that he would actually run into them. The artifact spirit of the sphere of noble aspirations said with certainty, there's a 90% chance of that happening. If he's a living being from the true spirit ruins world, then no matter how great his background is, it's impossible for him to have an existence that almost stepped into the Tao realm protect him. Even the royal family of the true spirit ruins world that you want to overthrow does not have such a foundation and qualifications. In truth, it was also very moved. While it was asleep, Chu Lien had unexpectedly come into contact with such a person. Could this be the so-called anomaly where one's luck was so astonishing that they could coincidentally meet a benefactor? Chu Lien was completely stunned. He truly did not expect that the mysterious young Master Gu would have such a terrifying background. Compared to his background, the royal family of the true Spirit Ruins world was not even worth mentioning. He swallowed his saliva and suddenly understood why Miss Huang would say such words to him. She probably knew about young Master Gu's background. However, due to some reason, they addressed each other as cousins. In that instant, Chu Lien figured out many things. However, he still had another question in his heart and could not help but ask, Artifact Spirit, since you said that this young Master Gu has such a terrifying background, why did he appear in the world of the true Spirit Ruins world and seem to be staying here for a long time? That was also what he did not understand. When it heard that the artifact spirit of the Grand Wish Ball was not surprised and answered calmly, Host, your vision is still too narrow. You only know about the true Spirit Ruins world, but you don't know how many terrifying and ancient civilizations were born in the vast expanse. Before these civilizations, the true Spirit Ruins world is not even worth mentioning. The territories under the jurisdiction of the giant forces of power in those civilizations span an unknown amount of time and space. It is difficult to imagine. Even the ancient true worlds can only rely on them, and the successors or disciples of those giant forces of power will be sent to many places to train and train before they succeed to the throne. After hearing this explanation, Chu Lien finally reacted. He nodded his head and said in realization, I know. The reason why young Master Gu appeared in the spiritual mound civilization is very likely to be because of the training of the faction behind him. That black-robed elder is a protector in charge of his safety. The artifact spirit of the Grand Wish Ball said, Your luck is really good to appear in the eyes of such a person. Besides, he is very young and has a bright future ahead of him. You are highly regarded by him. If you have the chance in the future, leave the true Spirit Ruins world and wander the vast expanse. It is also good karma. Chu Lien knew what it meant. However, his current goal was to overthrow the rule of the royal family of the true Spirit Ruins world and return peace to this world. Besides, how should he say it? He always felt a little uncomfortable in front of young Master Gu. He felt that the other party's tone and expression were always calm and looking down on him, as if he was standing in a very high world and looking down on all life. His tone was always unhurried and calm, as if there was nothing that could shock him. Even the women he had a good impression of were full of admiration and reverence for him. If I have the chance in the future, I will definitely leave the true Spirit Ruins world and visit other civilizations, Chu Lien thought to himself with longing and yearning in his eyes. With the Grand Wish Ball's explanation, he was completely at ease and no longer thought about leaving the virtuous gathering manor. At the same time, for Junior Sister's sake, I have to stay and become a guest elder. After making his decision, Chu Lien went straight to the point and found the Spirit Emperor to explain his intentions. However, he still pretended to consider for a long time before reluctantly staying behind as a guest of young Master Gu. Cousin has many guests under him, and there are many capable people. According to their strength and methods, they are divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and mortal. The salary and benefits of each level of guest elder are also different. It can even be described as the difference between heaven and earth. Originally, according to the rules, if young Master Chu Lien becomes a guest elder, he has to go through some trials before he can be awarded a guest elder token. However, because young Master Chu Lien is more familiar with me, Cousin made an exception and directly made young Master Chu Lien a heaven rank guest elder to enjoy the highest salary and resources. In the courtyard, the Spirit Emperor had a graceful figure and jade-like skin that shone with a moving luster. She led a large group of people over. With a smile, she read out the rules and requirements of being a guest elder to Chu Lien, as well as the salary. At the same time, she also got someone to hand an ancient token with the word heaven engraved on it to Chu Lien. As she spoke, the group of people brought over by the Spirit Emperor moved boxes of rare treasures over and placed them in the courtyard. There were Dharma artifacts, Taoist scriptures, mystic arts, Jade bones instantly, immortal clouds rose, and treasure mist surged. It was as if they had arrived at a treasure trove, with dazzling divine light everywhere. Some of the treasure chests were opened, releasing a strong medicinal fragrance that made one's pores open and become immortals. "These are the starting salaries," the Spirit Emperor said with a smile. These heavenly treasures were considered rare and precious divine items in the spiritual Mound civilization. They were priceless. Cultivators at the immortal Tao level would fight for them with all their might. Chu Lian looked at the dazzling light and medicinal fragrance in the courtyard and was speechless for a long time. Even though he was already prepared, he was still shocked and his head was buzzing. What did it mean to be rich? This was what it meant to be rich. Even though he had a supreme treasure like the noble ball, he could not help but swallow his saliva and look away for a long time. Chu Lian finally understood why the Grand Wish Sphere's artifact spirit would say those words. Just the salary he bestowed was already so frightening. How frightening would the treasures and wealth he had on him be? It was probably unimaginable. And this was only the tip of the iceberg of young Master Gu's background. Senior brother in the courtyard, Mingxiu, who had also witnessed this scene, was also in a daze for a long time. This was the first time she had seen so much wealth, and she wondered if she had seen wrongly, especially when there were many treasures that were compatible with her cultivation. At this moment, Mingxiu was envious of her senior brother. This was only the first day of being young Master Gu's guest, and he had already obtained so many treasures? If he was valued highly, how shocking would the rewards be? She did not dare to think about it. "Miss Huang, I would like to know what one has to do to become young Master Gu's guest. It's impossible to obtain so many treasures for no reason." Chu Lian recovered with great difficulty, but there was still a trace of shock in his eyes, and he could not help but ask. He did not believe that this young Master Gu was purely doing a good deed and did not have any ulterior motives. He was just giving out a salary and supporting a group of guests. Young Master Chu Lian will know about this in the future. I can't tell you about it now. Just focus on cultivating and raising your strength. Of course, as a guest, young Master Chu Lian will need to follow my cousin's instructions in the future. There are rules and regulations in this token. If young Master Chu Lian accepts it, you can refine it. And once you refine it, it means that young Master Chu Lian will be bound by the agreement. You have to look carefully. The Spirit Emperor still had a faint smile on his face as he explained to Chu Lian. He even kindly reminded him. Chu Lian had already expected this. It was impossible that there were no corresponding restrictions. So he immersed his mind in this token and quickly looked at the contents of the agreement. It was an equal agreement and would not force him to do anything that was against benevolence, righteousness, and morality. He still had some reservations and asked the weapon spirit of the noble ball to help him see if there were any problems with the agreement. After getting a definite answer, he was relieved to refine it. It was considered that he had signed this agreement, and a binding force was formed in the unseen world. After doing all this, the Spirit Emperor returned to report on his mission, satisfied. Chu Lian originally wanted to keep her and say a few more words, but when he saw the scene, he felt sad and regretful. I suggest that the host should not have any ideas about this woman. She should not be a simple person. Furthermore, she seems to be highly regarded by that young Master Gu. If you get too close to her, it will inevitably displease that young Master Gu and create more complications. This will not be beneficial to your current development. Now that the host is living under someone else's roof, it's best not to cross that line. There is a hierarchy. The weapon spirit of the noble ball's voice rang in Chu Lian's mind, reminding him. Chu Lian naturally knew this. He was not someone who only cared about his personal feelings and forgot about other things. With these resources, my strength can be greatly improved, and I will soon break through to the immortal Tao level. Then his eyes burned with passion as he looked at the piles of wealth that were shrouded in immortal light. On the other side, The Spirit Emperor had also returned to Gu Changa's side to report on the matter of recruiting Chu Lian. You did well. In a while, go find some people and create some trouble for him. You can't let him be too calm. It's reasonable to arrange some face-slapping scenes for him so that he won't be suspicious. After that, you can arrange for more experts to be brought out for training. At the right time, you can recruit him into the army and let him fight with the soldiers. Gu Changa nodded and instructed. Chapter 995. Yes, young master. Although the Soul Emperor was puzzled by Gu Changa's instructions, she did not ask too much. In her opinion, since Chu Lian was an anomaly, there was naturally something unusual about him. She could not treat him like an ordinary person. And what Gu Changa was doing now, she might be plotting something. Gu Changa was quite satisfied with the Soul Emperor's efficiency and intelligence. He could not help but think of Yin Mei. In the upper realm, Yin Mei was also like this when she worked for him. He did not need to explain or tell her anything, and she would naturally do a good job. This was why it was easier for a smart woman to win his favor. I have a strand of something that is very beneficial to your cultivation. After you return, completely refine it. It can increase your chances of passing the second heavenly blight tribulation by 80%. Thinking of this, Gu Changa opened his sleeve and a palm-sized crystal jade bottle appeared in his hand. Specks of starlight filled the air, giving off a magnificent and mysterious feeling. This was the immortal substance and creation substance that he had condensed some time ago. It could help Tao realm existences break through bottlenecks and increase their cultivation strength. However, the immortal substance and creation substance were very rare and could only be extracted and condensed from the vast power of destiny. With Gu Changa's current ability, condensing the immortal substance and creation substance would take a lot of time. Moreover, the process was very boring and long. He could give the Soul Emperor a strand because he felt that she was very smart and would be of great use to him in the future. Young master. Hearing this, the Soul Emperor was stunned and looked over in confusion. She did not understand what Gu Changa meant. Her puzzled gaze fell on the sparkling, white jade bottle, a substance that could increase her chances of passing the second heavenly blight tribulation by 80%? She'd never heard that such a mysterious substance existed in the world, and all existences that had attained the Tao realm were all peerless and terrifying figures that had dominated numerous eras. On this path, they comprehended the essence of the Tao and comprehended the method of transcendence. They had experienced many hardships and tribulations. However, she had never heard of a mysterious substance that could help Tao realm existences cultivate. This was because it required them to continuously accumulate magic power and break through restrictions and shackles. Gu Changa was not surprised by Ling Huang's reaction. Those in the Tao realm couldn't understand the essence and development of Tao, nor could they understand the evolution of matter, because this was a cognitive process of Tao realm cultivation. Only when they were in this realm could they break through the restrictions of the natural order of life and develop inconceivable wisdom would they be able to understand what the Tao realm was and what the material realm was. And at this time, even if he explained to them in an extravagant manner, they would not be able to understand and would only be more puzzled and at a loss. The substance in the small bottle is something that Tao realm existences need to cultivate. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. As long as you refine it, you will naturally experience its benefits. Could it be that you still think that I want to harm you? Gu Changa smiled and explained to her with an easygoing expression. Ling Huang didn't think that Gu Changa would harm her. Instead, she pursed her lips and smiled. Of course, I don't think that you will harm me. I just feel touched that you are explaining to me so patiently. She received the small white jade bottle. However, before she opened it and touched the substance inside, she felt an instinctive urge to swallow it. This made the smile on Ling Huang's face disappear. She stared at the small white jade bottle in her hand and became shocked, a little surprised, and a little incredulous. This was an indescribable feeling. It was like someone who had been hungry for a long time and suddenly saw a delicious meal. Or, like someone who had been walking in the desert for a long time without drinking water and suddenly saw a lake in front of them. This was an instinct that came from one soul. It was uncontrollable and unexplainable. It was as if it was innate. Young master, what substance is in this bottle? Why does it make me want to refine it so badly? My consciousness tells me that it is very important to me. Ling Huang's voice trembled slightly and was full of disbelief. A Tao realm existence could completely hide their karma and not be tainted by fate. They could eliminate all thoughts and thoughts. How could they not control their own instincts? And now, she was struggling to control her instincts so that she wouldn't do anything bad. She finally understood what Gu Changa meant when he said those words. There really was a substance in this world that could help a Tao realm existence cultivate. This was something that could cause a group of Tao realm existences to kill each other madly. Even if it was just a strand, it could change the color of the sky and dye time and space red. Even if I tell you now, you won't be able to understand what it is. However, you can understand it as spiritual energy in the eyes of mortals and immortal energy in the eyes of cultivators. Spiritual energy can help a cultivator cultivate and also allow a mortal to be reborn and live longer. As for immortal energy, it allows a cultivator to comprehend the changes of the immortal Tao and undergo an unimaginable transformation. Gu Changa's gaze was calm and he faintly smiled. What he said was just a simple description. Naturally, it wasn't enough to explain the mysterious nature of the immortal substance and the creation substance. However, the Spirit Emperor also vaguely understood the preciousness of this material. She couldn't hide her excitement. Her beautiful face was flushed with excitement as she said gratefully, "Young master, thank you so much." "Thank you, young master, for bestowing me with such a precious item. Ling Huang is extremely grateful. I will do my best to serve young master and not disappoint young master." This was her sincere expression, and it was difficult for her to calm down. Not only her, but even the group of old ancestors and the White Bone Ancestor King wouldn't be able to calm down and treat this lightly. What were Tao realm existences most worried about? Naturally, it was the heavens' blight tribulation that they couldn't pass. Celestials had 5 blights, and Tao realm existences had 9 blights. Although every time they passed a blight, their strength would undergo an earth-shattering change. But if they couldn't pass the heavens' blight tribulation, their body and soul would be destroyed and their Tao would vanish. And it could be said that the majority of existences would turn into dust and disappear. For Ling Huang, if she didn't have a heaven-defying opportunity or a way to change her fate in the future, she might stop before the second heaven's blight tribulation. Therefore, after learning that Chu Lien had a supreme treasure on him, she had schemed and plotted to seize it. "You worked hard for me, so I naturally won't treat you unfairly." Gu Changa smiled. Ling Huang was excited and only wanted to go back and refine this mysterious substance, so Gu Changa didn't let her continue to stay by his side. Although it was just a strand of the creation substance, it was enough for Ling Huang to refine for a long time. For Gu Changa, this was just a catalyst. The development and changes that would follow were what he valued. After Ling Huang refined this strand of immortal substance, her strength would definitely undergo a great leap forward. Although it wasn't enough for her to immediately pass the second heaven's blight tribulation and enter the middle stage of the illusory Tao realm, it would give her a greater chance of success. As long as the ancestors of the spiritual ruins weren't blind, they would be able to see Ling Huang's change. Similarly, Ancestor Whitebone, who pursued strength all his life, would definitely be able to see it. And Ling Huang's change only appeared after she followed Gu Changa and worked loyally for him. What did this mean? Ancestor King Whitebone and the group of spiritual Mound Imperial ancestors should be able to guess. Therefore, they will definitely try to find a way to get information from the Spirit Emperor. However, with the Spirit Emperor's intelligence, he will definitely not reveal anything. Therefore, they can only start with me. The only way is to gain my favor and work for me loyally. Only then will they be rewarded. Gu Changa let out a soft chuckle. A strand of immortal substance and creation substance was enough for him to truly use the entire spiritual ruins. This was much simpler and more practical than any sort of threat. How could increasing his own strength be more important than prolonging the life of the spiritual ruins world behind him? Time passed quickly. It had been half a month since Ling Huang received the immortal substance and creation substance from Gu Changa and returned to the palace to refine them. Gu Changa might have lived in seclusion and stayed in the virtuous gathering mountain villa, but he was also paying attention to the overall movements of the spiritual ruins royal family. He currently didn't have much energy to refine the immortal substance and creation substance. He could only wait for Ling Huang to come out of seclusion so that she could collect the power of providence gathered by the spiritual ruins royal family over the years. During this period of time, the spiritual ruins royal family continued to recruit troops. Brilliant light shone in the various greater worlds, and divine light shot into the clouds. Flying ships and warships crossed space one after another and gathered continuously. The vast and mighty army was assembled in preparation for the upcoming war. This was an incredibly terrifying force with nearly 100 immortal kings. They could completely wipe out many of the new civilizations. Of course, this was different from the army that was currently fighting against the Tao Changtru world. On this ancient warship, all the forces of the spiritual ruins world were gathered. Aside from the 100 immortal kings, there was also a considerable number of quasi-immortal emperors and immortal emperors. After all, this was an order personally given by the oldest group of progenitors of the spiritual ruins royal family. All the powerhouses in the 8 greater worlds did not dare to disobey. Over the years, the spiritual ruins royal family had raised hundreds of millions of battle-type tribes. These tribes had no intelligence. As long as they were provided with enough food and resources, they could grow madly. They were like chives that grew again and again after being cut. There were countless tribes like this in the lesser worlds under each greater world's jurisdiction. Unless the small world was destroyed or the resources were completely exhausted, these tribes would be able to rapidly develop and multiply in a very short period of time. In a war between civilizations, these domesticated races were often the weapons at the forefront of the war. Gu Changa was quite satisfied with the overall situation of the spiritual ruins royal family. Right then, they only needed to confirm the coordinates of the immortal spirit civilization in the vast expanse before invading and occupying it. He was also paying attention to Chu Lian. Based on his various actions during this period of time, he guessed that the supreme treasure Chu Lian had obtained might be related to the power of Kismet. When the powerful civilizations in the vast expanse reached the peak of their power, they would usually create one or several supreme treasures to stabilize the river of Kismet and prevent the decline of their power. Comparatively speaking, the supreme treasures of each civilization were different. They had different mysteries and different focuses. Naturally, there were also differences in strength. Some focused on offense, some focused on defense. Supreme treasures related to the power of Kismet were very rare. For Chu Lian to be able to obtain a supreme treasure created by a civilization, his luck was naturally not simple. Based on what Gu Changa knew, the spiritual ruins royal family did not have the right and foundation to create supreme treasures. Based on the current situation, Chu Lian and the vessel spirit of the supreme treasure he obtained did not seem to have realized what was going on. They were not very wary of Gu Changa. Instead, they thought that he was very likely a young disciple of an ancient civilization who had descended here to participate in the trial. Gu Changa had not thought of playing such an identity at first. However, during this period of time, he had some understanding and guesses after interacting with Chu Lian's junior sister. 0. Chu Lian had not completely let down his guard against him, but his junior sister was rather naive. Gu Changa sent someone to casually send some things to express his concern, which made her have a good impression of him. In the following few interactions and conversations, she could not help but mention some things that Chu Lian had said to her. This included guessing Gu Changa's background. Of course, it was not that Mingxiu was too stupid. It was just that her senior brother, Chu Lian, had been sent out by Gu Changa with a random reason. He had asked him to lead the rest of the guests and reverends to eliminate a demon that was causing chaos in a certain place. That was why Mingxiu could only stay in Assembly of Sages mountain villa alone. Besides cultivating, she was also rather bored. Some time ago, Chu Lian had spent a lot of effort and paid a huge price to convince all the guests and reverends to acknowledge his identity as a heaven guest. This also led to Mingxiu, who was his junior sister, being ostracized in Assembly of Sages mountain villa and did not have many friends. She was not old to begin with, and was in the prime of her life. She was not too wary of Gu Changa, who had given her and her senior brother a large amount of wealth. After learning about all of this, Gu Changa conveniently confirmed Chu Lian's and that treasure's tool spirit's guess, and dispatched people to give them another task to complete. They also gave Gu Changa an idea. With his current strength and the power of the army under his control, it was actually very difficult for him to take down a supreme, true world that had noticed something. It was just like the Sudan true world that the grand ancestor of the spirit ruins, Wan Yanxiu, had mentioned. If he could not forcefully attack them on the surface, then why could he not change his perspective and train of thought? Chapter 996. It had to be said that Chu Lian and the artifact spirit's guess gave Gu Changa some inspiration. After thinking about it, he felt that it was very feasible and would be much more convenient in his next plan. However, he had not found a second suitable target and could only put this matter aside for now. Half a month later, Emperor Ling woke up from her seclusion. She was originally at the early stage of the Void Dao realm, which meant that she had just passed the first heavenly blight tribulation. The strength she had accumulated was far from enough to touch the threshold of the second heavenly blight tribulation. While refining this wisp of eternity substance and creation substance, her strength had stabilized greatly and reached the limit of what she could bear. It could be said that she had reached the small perfection of the early stage of the Void Dao realm. Of course, she was still very far from the threshold of the second heavenly blight tribulation, but the increase in strength was extremely obvious. She had only absorbed less than 1% of the eternity substance and creation substance and could not truly refine them. Emperor Ling estimated that with her current strength, it would take her thousands of years or even longer to completely refine them. She was overjoyed, but she was not greedy. She needed to properly digest this power and take it step by step. Therefore, after coming out of seclusion, she came to find Gu Changa. According to his instructions, she sent people to build a formation and forge a container in the palace to collect the power of providence accumulated by the spiritual mound royal family over the years. Wan Yanxiu, ancestor king by Gu, and the others naturally sensed the changes in Emperor Ling's body and were shocked. This was especially so for Wan Yanxiu and the other patriarchs who knew Emperor Ling well. They had poured a lot of resources into nurturing Ling Huang and watched her grow step by step. She had reached where she was today, so everyone knew how talented she was. Originally, it was already heaven-defying that Emperor Ling could enter the Dao realm and successfully pass the first heavenly blight tribulation. However, after following Gu Changa, her strength had increased by 20% compared to before. This was almost impossible and inconceivable for Wan Yanxiu and the others. For a time, they were all speculating. Many patriarchs also wanted to find Emperor Ling and ask her the reason. Emperor Ling thought that she had received great benefits from Gu Changa. Not only did she gain his trust, but the two of them had also confided in each other previously. Naturally, it was impossible for her to tell him this. Besides, she had Gu Changa standing behind her. Normally, she still had to be courteous to the group of patriarchs, but now she couldn't be bothered with them and focused on working for Gu Changa. The old ancestors were dissatisfied. They gnashed their teeth in hatred. but there was nothing they could do. They nurtured the Spirit Emperor because they wanted to nurture a puppet to better control the spiritual Mound Imperial family. This would save them a lot of cultivation time. At the same time, he would collect more resources for them. Now, after this puppet had gained Gu Changa's favor, it no longer had any respect for these patriarchs. Their hearts were filled with hatred and helplessness. This lord's origin is mysterious, and he might possess something that can help us cultivate. From a certain point of view, he bestowed it to Sovereign Ling. From a certain point of view, he also wants to tell us that if we focus on working for him, there will be many benefits. Wan Yen Xiao was indeed worthy of being the great ancestor of the spiritual Mound Imperial family. He possessed great wisdom and quickly guessed Gu Changa's goal. He quickly told the other patriarchs to be tactful and not disturb the Spirit Emperor, lest they anger Gu Changa. No matter what, the Spirit Emperor was now considered one of his people and not a puppet they could control. If the Spirit Emperor remembered their old relationship, he would speak up for the spiritual Mound Imperial family in front of Gu Changa. On the other hand, it would bring them great trouble. Gu Changa saw all of this and wasn't surprised. Even the White Bone Ancestor King couldn't avoid this method of increasing one's strength, let alone them. Thus, while the army was gathering, some patriarchs of the spiritual Mound Imperial family would occasionally pay him a visit and take the initiative to express their loyalty. Among them, some had a premonition that they would soon welcome the second heavenly blight tribulation. However, with their strength, they definitely wouldn't be able to survive this tribulation and would die without a doubt. The great increase in the Spirit Emperor's strength this time allowed them to see the light of hope. Gu Changa naturally wouldn't give out the eternity substance and creation substance so easily. He needed to spend a lot of time to condense them himself, and he felt that it wasn't enough for his usual cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked the Spirit Emperor to specially collect the power of providence. The patriarchs of the spiritual Mound Imperial family almost had hope written on their faces. Some even had the intention of giving up their lives for the soul light they cultivated and were willing to be slaves for Gu Changa. At this point, as long as they could survive, it was more important than anything else. Gu Changa naturally didn't agree. He didn't want to waste resources on these people. Currently, the Spirit Emperor and the White Bone Ancestor King were enough for him. If he fought with other civilizations in the future, these patriarchs of the spiritual Mound Imperial family would be no different from cannon fodder in his eyes. On the other side, the war between the Dao Chang True World and the Immortal Spirit civilization lasted for several years. Outside the vast battlefield, tragic sounds of killing could be heard almost every day. Bloody light soared into the sky and flooded the universe. Large amounts of corpses fell from the sky like rain. Most of the runes on the world embankment had been worn away, and they were no longer as dazzling as before. The powerful warriors of the Immortal Spirit civilization continuously captured the ancient runes on the world embankment and analyzed the profound mysteries within. During this process, they gradually understood some of the mysteries. Then, powerful warriors who surpassed the Immortal Emperor realm took action and tore open a terrifying hole at the edge of the vast battlefield. The vast army charged through the hole that had been torn open. The armies of the various races in the Dao Chang True World were forced to retreat and set up camp in the vast battlefield to fight against the Immortal Spirit civilization. Both sides suffered great losses in this war. Several immortal kings from the Dao Chang True World had already died. The Immortal Emperor from the other world was heavily injured and was forced to retreat back to the Dao Chang True World to heal his wounds. Of course, the Immortal Spirit civilization had also suffered great losses. The terrifying demonic figure standing on the ancient warship personally entered the battlefield and tore open the rune around the vast battlefield, making it easier for the army to descend. However, during the critical moment, one of the disciples of the ancient monk Ape Zen took action. A terrifying saber glare swept out and shattered the universe, forcing the terrifying demonic figure to retreat. Only then did it stop. During the next few years, the immortal spirit civilization's army still did not choose to attack with full force. They continued testing the Tao Chang true world strength. Even so, the various races and Tao orthodoxies in the Tao Chang true world still suffered great losses. It was especially so for the immortal kings of several great races. They died in the war, and a large number of their people died. Even if the war ended, it would be difficult for them to recover in the future. Many of the ancient existences in the Tao Chang true world had already guessed the enemy's goal. As long as the war continued, the enemy would continue eating away at the Tao Chang true world's power. It was especially so for the ancient warship that looked like a shuttle. There were still many terrifying presences in it, but they had never entered the battlefield. In this sort of life and death war, the ones who played the decisive role were usually those who stood at the pinnacle of their power. This sort of existence could kill an immortal king with just one hand. They could move through the great worlds and defeat countless cultivators and living beings. I can already sense that there are 4 presences that surpass Tao realm in this true world. The strongest among them should be about the same level as me. If we really fought, he might not necessarily be my opponent. One of the other 3 presences is also very powerful, but we only need to send 2 of our people who have gone through 2 metamorphoses to deal with it. Shuai Yu's gaze was aloof. Many strange substances shone on her flat face. In front of her was a crystal wall that shone with a dim light. She could clearly see the devastating war outside the Tao Chang true world. Countless living beings died. In her eyes, it was as natural as the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. She did not show any emotion on her face. In front of her, the elites of the immortal spirit civilization stood solemnly. They were also paying close attention to the war manifested in the crystal wall. When Zhuyi Yu left her family this time, she brought many powerful warriors with her, and they belonged to the bloodline behind her. Among them, there were 6 people who had undergone a metamorphosis. Including her, there were 7 of them. This meant that there were 7 existences who had surpassed Tao realm on her side. This was an incredibly terrifying and invincible power that could completely sweep through any new civilization or true world. However, Zhuyu had always been careful. Even if her grandfather had divined her luck, she still needed to test the Tao Chang true world. That was why they had been continuously probing Tao Chang true world strength. Once they learned of its true strength, they truly attacked, paying particular attention to killing in one strike. We can truly attack now. We don't have an advantage in numbers against the Tao realm existences. Besides, I have a secret treasure of my family with me. During critical moments, I can disturb their minds. As Zhuo Yu spoke, her eyes shone with a cold glare. Crystalline pieces of armor appeared and covered her body, turning into a streamlined and aesthetically pleasing armor that shone with a cold light. She intended to attack personally. Once she finished speaking, she disappeared from the ancient warship with a bang and appeared in the great cosmos outside. The other figures in the ancient battlefield quickly put on their spirit armors and held their weapons before disappearing. Tao Chang True World, Heaven Crusher Alliance's headquarters. The leaders of the various races and orthodoxies were gathered there, discussing major matters with solemn expressions. The atmosphere was heavy. Ancient monk Ape Zen, Gu Wang, Wine Sword Immortal, and the other existences in Tao Realm were also there, but their expressions were different. In front of them was an ancient mirror that was crystalline and flat. It shone with a sparkling light and reflected the scene outside Tao Chang True World. The vast and surging army was like the torrent of the universe. It continuously pressed down and killed, and its attacks were even more astonishing and terrifying than before. What made them uneasy was that the terrifying demonic figure standing on the ancient warship had started moving. As the army approached, it wanted to descend upon Tao Chang True World. Is the enemy launching their final attack and not intending to continue probing? A veteran quasi-immortal emperor asked with a solemn expression. They should have investigated the current situation of Dao Chang True World and gained confidence, or else they wouldn't have taken the risk to launch such a large-scale attack. Another ancient existence said in a low voice. Many people's hearts turned cold at that moment. They did not know what to do. Was there any way to deal with this sort of disaster? The atmosphere in the hall was incredibly heavy and oppressive. The existences in Dao realm did not speak. The various races had suffered great losses during the war. They originally thought that they could stall for some time, but they did not expect that the enemy would come in such a menacing manner, see through the situation, and launch a full-out attack. Looks like we can only throw a cup of water into a burning cart of firewood and burn all our boats. Someone could not help but sigh, feeling that their chances of winning were slim. The enemy had clearly figured out the situation of Dao Chang True World. Once they gained confidence, they chose to launch an all-out attack. Even if the various races mobilized their armies to fight back, it was useless. The losses they had suffered over the years were simply too great. Even though it allowed the young and middle-aged prodigies of the various races to grow quickly, and quite a number of outstanding people had appeared. The price of this price was too high. However, such a price was truly too great. No one was willing to bear it. At that moment, a cult master of an ancient sect could not help but ask Guowang and the others, "Vice Alliance Master, do we still not know the Alliance Master's whereabouts?" His words caused the expressions of all the people in the hall to become lively. Many gazes fell on them, and there was a hint of anticipation in them. Even some of the new youths who had appeared over the years could not help but look over. They were incredibly curious about the Alliance Master, who was rumored to have caused everyone's expressions to change, fear and respect. These youths were all outstanding people who had appeared over the years. They were both men and women. Some had outstanding talent, some had astonishing luck, and all of them had different serendipities. Their performances in the war against the immortal spirit civilization were incredibly shocking, and they were later brought to Heaven-slaying Alliance to be groomed. Vice Alliance Master Guowang stood in the hall in a black robe. His face was covered by a hood, and his expression could not be seen clearly. He only shook his head and said, "The Alliance Master has something important to do. We cannot rely on him for this." This answer caused many people's expressions to darken. Over the years, whenever this question was asked, Guowang's answer would always be the same. He would say that Gu Changa had something important to do. In the beginning, the people thought that this was true, but when they thought about it later, perhaps even the Vice Alliance Master did not know where Gu Changa was at that moment. His answer was only to make the people feel at ease so that their hearts would not scatter. Looks like there's a high possibility that the Alliance Master is no longer in Dao Chang True World and has long since abandoned this place. There were people who guessed that the Alliance Master had only built Heaven-slaying Alliance out of interest and had never thought about managing it. That's right. With the Alliance Master's strength, it would be easy for him to move about freely in the vast expanse. Why would he spend so much effort to do these things? At that moment, some whispers rose in the hall. The originally oppressive atmosphere became even heavier. If this had happened in the past, perhaps no one would have dared to say such things to slander Gu Changa and make wild guesses about him. But now he was no longer in Dao Chang True World. The disaster had arrived, and it was hard to say whether Dao Chang True World would still exist at that time. Who would care about such things now? Even Guowang only frowned and did not ask them to keep quiet. Right now, the only ones who were able to maintain their tranquility were the ape Zen ancient monk and his disciples. Chapter 997. Many people's gazes landed on the Dao realm existences in the hall, wanting to hear their opinions. Guowang remained silent, but his eyes seemed to be shining with light. He was calculating and thinking about something. The wine sword immortal had also changed from his usual shabby appearance. His expression was incredibly solemn as he stared at the image of the great battle reflected in the ancient mirror. The multiverse in the barren lands continued crumbling. Its laws were destroyed, as if it was about to completely return to dust. Uncle Gu isn't the kind of person they say he is. When he was in Green Mountain Village, he treated people really well. How could he abandon the Dao Chang true world? Wang Xiaoniu, who had grown up a long time ago, now looked like a young swordsman. He stood on his master, the Wine Sword Immortal, and mumbled to himself softly in disbelief. In the great battle against the immortal spirit civilization, he had also shone brilliantly and killed many of his enemies. He could be considered to be a dazzling figure among his peers who were incredibly talented. At that moment, quite a number of the younger generation in the hall who had a good relationship with him could not help but start talking to him. Many people knew that Wang Xiaoniu, who had been taken in as the Wine Sword Immortal's disciple, had once called Gu Changa Uncle Gu. This also caused his identity to be rather unique. As for the reason, Wang Xiaoniu had never mentioned it to anyone. When they heard him call himself Uncle Gu, many people immediately had strange expressions appear on their faces, and they looked over. Wang Xiaoniu shook his head and did not say anything more about this topic. Gu Changa had once lived in Green Mountain Village for a period of time. Besides him and his master, the Wine Sword Immortal, very few people knew about him. The atmosphere in the hall was still heavy and oppressive. It was as if there were thick clouds pressing down on the people's heads, causing them to be unable to breathe. Many people stared at the devastating battle reflected in the ancient mirror, and they could not bear to see it, and grief rose in their hearts. I wonder if the Tao Child has any news about the Alliance Master. He is highly regarded by the Alliance Master, and his strength has increased by leaps and bounds during this period of time. He almost killed a quasi-immortal emperor from the immortal spirit civilization. As long as he has enough time, he will definitely be able to reach the level of the Vice Alliance Master and the others. The Alliance Master is grooming the Tao Child as his successor. It's impossible for him to ignore the Tao Child's safety. What's more, I heard that the Alliance leader's reverse scale was fighting against the foreign enemies in the vast expanse battlefield some time ago. There's no way the Alliance leader wouldn't care about her. That's true, but the Alliance Master doesn't have to care about us. He has backup plans to protect the people around him. What are we to him? Many people began to discuss in low voices as bitterness appeared on their faces. The most talked about was Wang Wushang, the current Taoist of the Heaven-Slaying Alliance, and Gu Xian who had appeared in the vast expanse battlefield a while ago and performed amazingly. Anyone who knew about the Upper Realm and Gu Changa's past would know about Gu Xian's identity. That was why, when they found out that she was killing enemies in the boundless battlefield, many ancient existences from the Heaven-Punishing Alliance were alarmed. They personally went there to bring her back, worried that something might have happened to her. In that place, even immortal kings didn't have the confidence to protect themselves. Although she was talented, she was too young to stop the army of the immortal spirit civilization. Unfortunately, Gu Xian didn't listen to them. She continued to stay there and kill enemies, and no one dared to attack her. The Heaven-Punishing Alliance could only keep an eye on her at all times, worried that something might have happened to her. Gu Xian's performance in the boundless battlefield was extremely outstanding. She killed several immortal kings from the immortal spirit civilization. This also greatly boosted the morale of the army from the Dao Chang true world. This also allowed her to gain a lot of prestige. Many powerful warriors were willing to follow her and fight bravely in the boundless battlefield. When the news reached the Dao Chang true world, many young and middle-aged prodigies also rushed over to fight against the enemies. Even the other Dao realm existence from the Dao Chang true world, Ming, personally appeared to protect Gu Xian. He was a person from the era of Khanate legends, and in terms of seniority, he was the oldest person in the Dao Chang true world. He knew that Gu Xian was the lord who had led the Heaven-Punishing Alliance in her previous life. Gu Xian might have already reincarnated and perhaps no longer cared about her past. However, to Ming, she was still a lord who was worthy of his respect and admiration. It was a pity that Gu Xian didn't want his protection. She felt that this battle was a form of training for her. It would allow her to grow faster and make up for what she lacked in the past. When Gu Xian was mentioned, the expressions of many people in the hall changed. Ming guessed their thoughts and swept his gaze across the crowd, coldly. Miss Xian's decision to train in the boundless battlefield is her own decision. It has nothing to do with the Alliance Chief. It's best if you don't set your sights on Miss Xian. In his eyes, Gu Chang'e would definitely not ignore Gu Xian and the others. However, protecting one's family and one's lover was one thing, and protecting the entire Dao Chang true world was another. They couldn't be mixed together. Gu Chang'e had said it before. What did the lives of the people in the world have to do with him? Since Ming had said so, the people in the hall naturally didn't dare to say anything else. They all fell silent. At that moment, ancient monk Ape Zen had a solemn expression on his face. He put his palms together and said, "I came here with the intention of helping the immortal region get through this crisis, but I didn't expect that the enemy would be so strong. I'm weak, and I might not be able to provide much help when the time comes." He said those words because he wanted to tell the crowd the truth. If it was a matter of life and death, he would definitely not fight to the death. Before he came to the Dao Chang true world, ancient monk Ape Zen hadn't expected that the enemy they would run into would be so strong. During this period of time, the immortal spirit civilization had been investigating the Dao Chang true world strength. On the other hand, weren't they also prying into the other party's strength? Master Qing Feng's expression was slightly dejected. He might have the strength of an immortal king, but he wouldn't be of much use in this war. Ancient monk Ape Zen cast him a glance and shook his head. As long as you're alive, you won't have to worry about not having firewood. This disaster is difficult to deal with. You must be mentally prepared. The 9 heavens might be far away, but I still have the ability to bring you and your people there. If Tao Lord Eternal Life had not ordered him to do so, he would not have asked about Qing Feng and the Dao Chang true world. He had no choice but to do so now. When even ancient monk Ape Zen said those words, the people's expressions became even more distressed. Quite a number of them felt despair, unable to see any hope. No matter what, this disaster is something all of us will have to face. It's useless to place our hopes on anyone at this moment. Even if we die in the end, we will make the invaders pay the price. An ancient existence in the hall sighed, no longer placing his hopes on Gu Chang'e. No one could guess Gu Chang'e's thoughts and plans, so how could they be sure whether he was planning to protect the Dao Chang true world? Before this, Gu Chang'e did not have a good reputation. When his name was mentioned, it was accompanied by fear. Instead of placing their hopes on the vague hopes of Gu Chang'e, it was better to truly rely on themselves. What are your plans, Vice Alliance Leader? We can only rely on you now. Some people cast their gazes on Gu Wang. Besides ancient monk Ape Zen, Gu Wang could be considered the strongest expert in the Dao Chang true world. If he could turn the tide, then perhaps there would be a chance for a change in the situation. The long river of destiny has not dried up. Even if it is a disaster, there is still life. Gu Wang said calmly. The instant his words left his mouth, a frightening scene suddenly appeared in the ancient mirror. At the edge of the vast battlefield, a terrifyingly large black hand suddenly descended from the starfields. Along with the fragments of time and the great Tao, it tore through the great cosmoses and sank them. This is bad. The existence in Dao realm has taken action. The immortal spirit civilization is about to launch a full attack. When they saw this, Ming and the Wine Sword Immortals' expressions changed, and they instantly disappeared from the hall. The leaders of the various races were also shocked and horrified. They turned into divine light and rushed out to look at the vast battlefield. Even if there was an endless distance between them, they could see that the sky had shattered and was completely pierced through. Terrifying waves of power pressed down and covered the entire area. The great Tao trembled, and the light on the world dike was quickly extinguished. The pillars of light that could easily destroy an army crumbled in an instant, turning into a rain of light that broke through the dike and scattered in all directions. A terrifying figure seemed to be standing in the depths of multiple dimensions of time and space, looking down at the entire Dao Chang True world coldly. He stretched out his hand, which was as black as ink, and pierced through the great cosmoses below him layer by layer. It covered the entire world. Mountains and rivers collapsed, planets exploded, and the cosmos was instantly torn to ashes. No living being or cultivator could stop it. It was like smoke that scattered when the wind blew. It disintegrated in midair and disappeared. Boom! The hand shuddered lightly, and many of the broken universes at the edge of the vast battlefield crumbled and disintegrated. The ancient warship that rested there even more so exploded, completely shattering. The great river of time was directly evaporated. No matter what sort of living being it was, they could not withstand this sort of wave of power. It was a wave of power that completely crushed them. This was the wave of power when existence in Dao realm attacked. He merely stretched out his hand and did not use any divine abilities, but it could already be said to be able to destroy the world and reopen the chaos. Rumble! The laws of the world crashed into each other. The laws of Dao were obliterated, and violent sounds of turbulence rang out. Behind the terrifying figure was an even larger army from the immortal spirit civilization. It was so vast that it covered the sky and the sun. The terrifying fog stretched across the heavens and the earth, as if there was no end in sight. Boundless black clouds covered the sky, shrouding the entire area in all directions. Behind the army stood many terrifying figures. They were too large, and their presences were incredibly terrifying. They were so oppressive that everyone found it hard to breathe. The immortal spirit civilization invaded on a large scale. An endless army rushed out from the shuttle-shaped ancient warship. Worlds opened up one after another, and more living beings surged out. They were endless, completely drowning the world. Everyone listened to my orders. Break through the barriers of the worlds and slaughter all existences above a mortal realm in this true world. The terrifying figure who attacked gave the order. The hand did not retreat and continued to strike down. It wanted to break through the barriers of the worlds so that the army could rush over more easily. Boom! A violent tremor rang out, as if it wanted to destroy all the universes. You're courting death. The Wine Sword Immortal rushed out and sent out a sword aura that could cut through space and time and annihilate the laws of Dao. He wanted to cut down the hand. Since the existence in Dao realm from the immortal spirit civilization had attacked, he naturally had nothing to say. He fought the other party to the death. In an instant, his figure pierced through many spaces and appeared in the endless world beyond. Laughable. You want to stop us with just this amount of power? Over the countless years, there are plenty of true worlds that are much stronger than you. If you know what's good for you, don't fight back. Become our slaves and serve as our slaves. Then you can continue to live. Another person from the immortal spirit civilization who was equivalent to Dao realm appeared. There was a strange ripple around him, as if he did not exist in reality. It also seemed like he had been placed in the universe and was always there. At the edge of the vast battlefield, Abyss rushed out. With an aloof expression, he fought against that person. When the battle erupted, the remaining waves alone were enough to make immortal kings explode. Boom! At that moment, figures rushed out from many directions in Dao Chang True World. Their levels of cultivation varied. Some were equivalent to immortal kings, and some were quasi-immortal emperors. They continued fighting. The world was overturned, and the great cosmos collapsed. The immortal spirit civilization's army was like a hot knife through butter. They could not fight back. In another direction, existences equivalent to Dao realm appeared as well. The hand only shook, and space and time were destroyed. Forget immortal kings, even immortal emperors coughed up blood and exploded. At that moment, ancient monk Ape-Zen had no choice but to bring his disciple to fight against those existences equivalent to Tao realm as well. Fortunately, his level of cultivation was stronger, and he was only slightly weaker than Guwang. Those enemies were also equivalent to those who had gone through their first and second decay in Tao realm, so they could somewhat handle them. The final battle came too suddenly, and no one was prepared for it. Many people in Tao Chang True World did not even manage to react to it. In just an instant, the vast battlefield was lost, and a large part of the universe fell. Many regions crumbled and disintegrated in an instant. The cultivators and living beings in them did not even have the chance to react before they turned into a rain of light. Countless people were fighting, from immortal kings to mortal Tao domain cultivators. Within the various small worlds, sounds of battle could also be heard. Gu Xian was bathed in blood. He fought against several immortal kings alone, but he still had the strength to help the other people in the battlefield. In another region, his younger sister, Shun Xian was also fighting. Her black hair was dyed in blood, and there were many wounds on her body. No one was spared from the battle that affected the entire Tao Chang True World. The immortal spirit civilization's army came in too fiercely, and it was far more terrifying than any of the previous attacks. There were also Tao realm existences supporting them, and they broke through the barriers of the great cosmos. The Tao Chang True World's army could only retreat continuously. In the blink of an eye, many of the cosmoses outside the immortal region were occupied. Many people's eyes turned red, and they fought without any regard for their own safety. If they continued retreating, then their final line of defense would crumble. The heartland of Tao Chang True World, the worlds and cosmoses where the various races and orthodoxies were located, would welcome a destructive blow. Chapter 998. The worlds were in turmoil. An endless amount of blood-red light surged into the heavens. Large swathes of universes collapsed under the battle. The cultivators living in them exploded continuously under the attacks of the immortal spirit civilization's army. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Many figures rushed out of the Tao Chang True World. To fight against the army, they fought to the death, not caring about anything else. Even if they died, they would make the other party pay a terrible price. Boom! In the depths of the universe in the distance, blood-red light surged into the heavens. An immortal king faced two people of the same level, but in the end he could not win against them and chose to self-destruct. The fruit of Tao crumbled, and a terrifying power shook the entire river of time, heavily injuring the two enemies. Their bodies exploded, and they were forced to retreat. But even so, they could not stop the immortal spirit civilization's army. There was not even the slightest sign of slowing them down. There was still a shocking battle erupting in the depths of space-time. Those were ripples of power belonging to immortal emperors. Among the few remaining immortal emperors in the Tao Chang True World, there was one who was fighting against his opponent. A terrifying aura burst forth at that moment, turning into black light that shattered the fog of chaos to reveal his appearance. It was a middle-aged man with black hair that fell on his shoulders. His chi surged, and his eyes were like a sea of lightning that could see through time and space. This was the first time he revealed his true appearance before others, but his current state was not right. He was injured. There were people of the same level as him from the immortal spirit civilization who sensed his ripples of power and descended to kill him with their companions. The ripples of power from the battle between immortal emperors had already spread to other dimensions, not the current one. But even if a hint of it leaked out, it would be a devastating disaster to the other living beings. Compared to the immortal spirit civilization, the Tao Chang True World's foundation was too weak, especially since they had not recovered from the second calamity. On the other side, the great commander from the immortal palaces, surviving races, was also fighting against someone of the same level as him. His silver armor was dyed in blood, and he held a silver spear. The light from his spear cut through the universe and shook it. His opponent was also someone of the same level as him. He had fought against the immortal emperor from the other world before, and he also had companions by his side. The two of them worked together to fight against him and firmly gain the upper hand. They did not even use their full strength. The immortal emperor from the other world had been injured badly when he fought against this person outside the vast expanse. He had yet to heal, and it was difficult for him to bring out his peak state. These were the immortal emperors that the Tao Chang true world could fight against as of then. They could not compare to their opponents at all. On the ancient warship that was shaped like a flying shuttle, there were a few figures that were shrouded in the dust of primal chaos. They didn't make a move, and they just watched coldly and watched the situation of the battle. Without a doubt, this was also in existence on the level of a mortal emperor realm. Space-time fragments and great Tao mists curled around his body, suppressing the universe to the point where it was about to collapse and explode. The power of the new true world and the ancient true world could not be surpassed. Even with Tao Chang true world's current power, it was impossible for it to hope to fight against them. And this was only a portion of the power of one of the clans in the immortal spirit civilization. If the immortal spirit civilization decided to invade with all their forces, then true Tao Chang world would definitely not have a chance to fight back. Not to mention that there were two figures comparable to the Tao realm who were still standing there without making a move. That incomparable pressure made it hard for the army from Tao Chang true world to breathe. It was as if they were suffocating. Their souls trembled, and they were filled with fear and despair. Are you still going to put up a desperate struggle? You are not the immortal spirit civilization's opponent at all. Be smart and seal your own limbs and arcane powers. Then you might be able to keep your lives. The immortal spirit civilization has fought in the vast expanse world and destroyed countless true worlds. The true worlds that were far stronger than you were all reduced to ashes and buried under our feet. It is your honor to be enslaved by us. Aren't you going to be grateful? Zhuo Yu was clad in armor. His entire body shone as he stood outside Tao Chang true world. There was an aloof look on his face, and the ripples of his voice spread through the various universes and great worlds. When countless living beings and cultivators heard his words, they lifted their heads in fear and terror. She appeared there with a terrifying presence that surpassed those in Tao realms spreading out from her body. It covered the sky. All sorts of terrifying substances surrounded her. Some of them were like flowing streams of light. Some were like heavenly lightning. Some were like flames. They did not have a definite shape, as if they were an unknown deity that had transcended the world. This is truly a rare blood-red feast. The blood-red flower is so beautiful, but it's a pity that it will soon wither again. Another blurry figure beside Zhuo Yu spoke as well. He had a cruel and callous smile on his face. He treated the great battle as a beautiful sight and admired the blood-red flower that bloomed in the universe. This was another existence in Tao realm who had not attacked. He was also a supreme warrior from the immortal spirit civilization who had gone through a metamorphosis in his heart. His strength was only below Zhuo Yu's. We have no grudge against you. So why did you descend and slaughter us? An ancient existence in Tao Chang true world roared furiously with bloodshot eyes and bone-deep hatred in his heart. He had lived for a long time, but his level of cultivation was only that of a true immortal. In the great battle, he could only be cannon fodder. He could only watch as many of the people he was familiar with died, crumbled, disintegrated, and turned into blood fog. This filled his heart with hatred and pain. He wanted to kill all the invaders to quell the anger in his heart. Why are we talking to them? Even if I have to sacrifice my last drop of blood, I will not submit. I will make them pay the price. There was also an ancient cultivator roaring furiously in another great cosmos. His entire body shone with light, and he chose to self-destruct to fight against his enemies. The situation in the other great cosmoses was also incredibly tragic. Some people were covered in wounds. Their blood had almost run dry, but they were still fighting against their enemies. Master has passed away, and we have been stuck in this realm for many years. It's difficult for us to improve. We have let down our master. Today, I hope that we can protect Master's homeland with this remaining body. In a land of a great sect that had already fallen, several old men whose blood had dried up used the last of their strength to burn their essence. Crimson rays of light rushed out from the top of their skulls, and they led all their disciples to charge forward. So what if we burn the last bit of our remaining strength today? We are cultivators who practice the will of heaven and follow our hearts. Why should we be afraid of a battle? We will live and die together with Tao Chang True World. In another great cosmos, old men with white hair and stubble on their beards walked out of their land. Their chi had long since declined, but they were not afraid of death. They wanted to continue fighting for their foundation. Their levels of cultivation were different. The strong were already in the immortal realm, and the weak were only in the mortal realm. Kill them. Countless cultivators and living beings rushed forward. They had long since cast aside all thoughts of life and death. Their eyes were filled with madness. Foolish living beings, you are ants trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You overestimate yourself. The figure beside Jua, you watched all of this with disdain. His eyes were filled with indifference. Zhui Yu was also indifferent. She did not show any change in her expression. She had seen this too many times. Many people in the true worlds occupied by the immortal spirit civilization were like this. They wanted to fight to the death to protect their homeland. But so what? It would not change anything. But there's something strange. There was still some doubt in Zhui Yu's heart. She had noticed some abnormalities. The living beings who had died did not seem to have truly had their bodies and souls destroyed. There seemed to be some sort of power protecting these souls, not letting them completely disappear. If you want to destroy this world, then you must think carefully about what sort of price you will have to pay. Gu Wuwang's figure also appeared at that moment. He appeared in front of Zhui Yu and spoke calmly. He did not attack immediately. Although he was not weaker than Zhui Yu, the immortal spirit civilization had always been mysterious. Their method of existence was very unique, and it was very difficult to completely kill them. Besides, there was another existence beside him who was only slightly weaker. If they fought, she would definitely lose. Zhui Yu was not surprised to see him appear. She only said coldly, "My immortal spirit civilization has dominated the vast expanse for countless eras. This is the first time I've heard a new true world threaten us." The figure beside her was called Zhuohua. He let out a derisive laugh. "Sir, could it be that you think you can stop all of us by yourself? Since it was not easy for you to reach this step, it's best if you don't seek your own death. Why don't you let us leave behind soul imprint so that we can control you? Perhaps in the future, you will have a chance to transform. The new true world might have the spark of the immortal Tao civilization, but it had not yet fully developed. However, even if it had grown to the level of an ancient true world, it would not be able to make the immortal spirit civilization pay attention to it. After all, the immortal spirit civilization could be considered as one of the most powerful civilizations below the most powerful civilizations. It was ranked in the upper middle. The turbid race behind them alone had the power and resources to sweep through some of the ancient true worlds. Gu Wuwang's expression was still very calm. He was not affected by the words of the two people. He simply said, "I'm just reminding you of this. If you stop now, give the various races enough compensation, kneel down, and repent sincerely, there may be a chance for things to turn around. Otherwise, when the time comes, the civilization behind you will face a great calamity and be destroyed. At that time, you will regret what you did today." Gu Wang spoke very calmly, as if he was explaining something very simple. "I think you've gone mad. Look at the situation now, and you're still saying such foolish words. Do you think we're stupid? That we'll face a great disaster? Do you think we're easy to fool? That a new true world can't even fight against one of our warships, and that our civilization will face destruction? Before Yu could speak, Hua, who was beside her, sneered again. His voice spread through all the universes and great worlds without bothering to hide it. He thought that Gu Wuwang had gone mad. Perhaps he knew that he could not turn the situation around at the last moment, so he wanted to trick them. What a joke. This is just a painful struggle before death. It's just a baseless fantasy. When the powerful warriors of the immortal spirit civilization who were fighting in the other battlefields and space-time heard these words, they could not help but laugh loudly. Many of them had pity on their faces, as if they were watching an ant struggling in pain before death. Many of the powerful warriors in the Dao Chang Tru world knew what Gu Wang meant. There was originally some hope in their eyes, but in the blink of an eye it faded away. Zhuo Yu's eyes flickered. She remembered the uniqueness of this true world. Since the flame seed of the immortal Tao had been left behind, then there must have been an unfathomable existence who had once stayed in this true world. Could this person be talking about that unfathomable existence? Grandfather divined for me that there won't be any danger. This person is just trying to trick us. If there was really such an existence keeping watch over this true world, why would he only appear now and say these things? When Yu thought of this, her expression became aloof again. She laughed coldly. Unfortunately, your tricks are useless against us. I've already seen through your plans. You can't trick us. Gu Wuwang sighed in his heart. In truth, he did not have much hope. He only wanted to stall for time, but he did not expect that Hua would see through it so quickly. However, he still said calmly, I hope you won't regret it in the future. That Lord's rage is not something the civilization behind you can quell. You're just asking for death. Hua's expression turned cold. He did not expect that Gu Wuwang would continue saying those words. It made him angry and he attacked. He and Gu Wuwang instantly fought. Their figures filled the entire universe in an instant as they rushed into the world beyond. You also knew that Gu Wuwang was the strongest person in Dao Chang Tru world at the moment. As long as he got rid of him, there would be no hope for the war. It would soon end. She also attacked. Her boundlessly powerful presence was far stronger than that of any of the Dao realm existences. Time and space exploded, and the chaos became chaotic. The countless living beings in Dao Chang Tru world noticed the scene, and they were incredibly worried and terrified. Even the Abyss, Wine Sword Immortal, and the others who were fighting against the other Dao realm cultivators from the immortal spirit civilization were no exception. Progenitor, in a great cosmos, Guxian also noticed this scene. She put away her worry, and her gaze was calm and cold. Her figure moved like a swan as she moved through the universe. Her sword swept through the air, and the sword light moved through millions of lis. It cut down planets, cut galaxies, and cut through universes. The immortal spirit civilization's army that rushed forward was cut into pieces and turned into ashes under the sword light. At the same time, she fought against the two immortal kings. She still had the strength to stop the army's attack. If this continues, there will be no way to break out of this situation. There are simply too many enemies. No matter how strong you are, sooner or later, you will be exhausted to death. Hurry up and retreat. Don't continue taking risks. By her side, the big red bird shouted anxiously. It was incredibly worried and did not think that Guxian could continue holding on. There were simply too many powerful warriors from the immortal spirit civilization. She could still fight back and forth against the immortal kings. However, once she ran into an existence that surpassed the immortal kings, accidents might happen. Chapter 999. I can't retreat. If I retreat, who will protect the villagers of Peach Village? Who will protect Master, Village Chief, and the others? Gu Xiener shook her head. Her breathing was very calm, and her tone was also very calm. As she spoke, she sent out another wave of sword aura. It swept through millions of miles and stopped the charging army. Girl, why are you so foolish? Even if you stay here, you won't be able to stop them. You're so stupid. With your talent, you should just find a place and cultivate for a few hundred years. Then, you'll be able to easily defeat these people. The big red bird was anxious. It felt like there was something wrong with this girl's head. At this juncture, she was not thinking about running for her life, but still wanted to resist. If the other immortal emperors were to free themselves or notice them, how was she supposed to fight against them? After all, the life-saving items Gu Changa had given her had all been used up in the heavenly tomb. Gu Xianer did not have any life-saving items now. Previously, she still had her masters and Tao Yao to protect her. But now, if she really encountered a life-threatening situation, then only death would await her. I know what you said, but I can only do my best. I cannot watch these people die miserably and do nothing. Besides, I was once the true mountain and sea world's Tao child. This world used the kismet of all eras to help me grow. I am indebted to it. Gu Xiener's expression was very calm. As she quickly attacked, she answered, how could she not know this? But if she chose to flee at this moment, then she would be betraying her Tao heart. This was definitely not her character and choice. As soon as Gu Xian finished speaking, she felt as if there was some kind of power supporting her from the unseen world. Her nascent divinity was shining. The essence of the heaven incarnation she had absorbed earlier was turning into a vast amount of magic power. Your nascent divinity is transforming into the light of a quasi-immortal emperor. It might only be a hint, but it's just an opportunity. The big red bird could not help but be shocked. It could only be said that Gu Xiener was indeed a person born to face calamity. During the battle, her nascent divinity actually gave birth to an opportunity to transform. If the transformation went smoothly, she could break through and become a quasi-immortal emperor in one go. Her strength would undergo a tremendous change. At that moment, in another direction, there were tens of millions of cold knife lights. They were also whistling over. They were going to split the great universe. The other two opponents were also taking action, their faces carrying anger. They never thought that they would be held back by a young girl, unable to take her down in a short period of time. They were existences comparable to immortal kings. Even in the immortal spirit civilization, they were supreme experts who ruled over many worlds and were extremely powerful. The young girl in front of them was clearly young, but her cultivation was not inferior to theirs. Let's join hands and quickly capture this woman. Don't let her complete her transformation. Otherwise, none of us will be her match. One of them coldly grunted. He noticed a change in Gu Xian. His words shook the entire universe, and he showed no mercy. Gu Xian raised her jade-like hand. The fluctuations of her Tao filled the air, turning into an immortal ancient shield. It shone with resplendent light and blocked this attack. How terrifying were the shockwaves from the battle between Zhu Qiu immortal kings. Boom! A great explosion happened here. It was as if countless stars exploded. The radiance was dazzling, making it hard for one to open their eyes. It was enough to destroy all Tao laws. Her figure trembled slightly, retreating several tens of thousands of li in the cosmos before stabilizing her body. Then, she brandished her sword again. Sword energy scattered out, millions and millions of strands covering the sky dome, shaking up the long river of time, cleansing past and present. Gu Xian fought a great battle against them again. Sword energy and knife light weaved about, wreaking havoc in this ruined cosmos. Tao laws shattered. In that instant, they were blasted into ashes. At this time, even if other immortal kings entered this place, they would still be in danger. Countless strands of destructive aura extended, continuously seeping in, wiping out everything. The void was already riddled with holes, filled with great rifts. Strong winds blew out, biting cold and soul-shattering. Immortal spirit civilizations, two immortal king-level experts' methods were tyrannical and powerful. One of them brandished a black heavenly blade light enough to sever the great cosmos. It was boundlessly brilliant, crushing down. It was bone-chilling cold, like an autumn wind that swept through the heavens, bringing with it a destructive aura. The other person's methods weren't simple either. When his large hand was brandished, all kinds of terrifying methods swept through the sky, cutting through space and time, directly slaughtering towards Gusian, killing intent on full display. Immortal king laws that blotted out the sky and covered the earth descended with a loud rumble. In an instant, they submerged this battlefield, causing the endless void to suddenly explode. Then there was another blade extremely strange. The aura seemed to have come from the long river of time, releasing the immortal will and killing intent of an immortal king, shocking the entire world. These two immortal king existences had been familiar with each other for many years, often sparring and discussing the Tao together on how to cooperate against enemies. When they joined forces, even if it was three immortal kings of the same level, they could still contend against them. Gu Xian'er's beautiful brows furrowed, momentarily encountering a dangerous situation. She quickly retreated towards the great cosmos behind her, instantly retreating millions and millions of li. However, the two's killing moves were like maggots in one's bones, following closely behind. The star domains along the way exploded and collapsed, directly collapsing. The entire cosmos was about to explode, unable to bear this type of aftermath at all. I already told you not to force yourself. If something unexpected happens to you, if Gu Changa finds out, he won't be able to obliterate my true soul. The big red bird couldn't help but cry out in alarm, its eyes revealing human-like fear. Gu Xian didn't have time to pay it any attention, firing out streak after streak of great Tao symbols, divine light brilliant, every single symbol the size of a star, trying to resist the two's killing moves. However, these two immortal kings were much more powerful than the immortal kings she faced before, to the extent where she felt like they were about to reach half-immortal emperor level. Under their joint attacks, the other immortal kings would instantly explode into bloody mist. If not for Gusian being powerful, far exceeding ordinary immortal kings, she might have long been injured as well. In the heavenly tomb, she obtained many magical artifacts. Right now, they were all activated, flying out. However, most of them were damaged, precious pagodas, ancient cauldrons, all of them turning into dazzling divine light, all of them smashing towards the two. Boom! The universe trembled, and the black blade light flew past. These magical artifacts trembled, then exploded, turning into powder that dissipated. Where do you think you're going? The immortal king who attacked had a cold expression. There seemed to be a huge star rotating in his eyes that could obliterate all things. It was impossible for them to let Gu Xian complete her metamorphosis. At that moment, they attacked with all their strength and also activated their own immortal king magical artifacts. Ugh! Gu Xian coughed out a mouthful of blood. Her skirt, which was already stained with blood, became even redder. She continued retreating towards the great universe behind her. Time and space became blurry as she avoided the other immortal king's killing move. In the other battlefields, quite a number of people noticed this scene, and worry appeared on their faces. However, at that moment, they couldn't spare any energy to help Gu Xian. Even they themselves were like clay bodhisattvas crossing a river, unable to protect themselves. The battle on Gu Xian side was only a small part of the entire battlefield. The Tao Chang True world's foundation was far inferior to the immortal spirit civilizations. The difference in the number of powerful warriors was too obvious, and there was already a clear cut. The immortal spirit civilization could send out 2 or even 3 people at the same level as them to fight against the Tao Chang True world. At that moment, even if someone with astonishing talent could fight against several people at the same time, sooner or later, they would be exhausted. On the other side, the battle was equally shocking. The battle between those in Tao realm was no longer something that cultivators in the path of immortals could see. Many dimensions were shattered. They could only see a blurry hand slapping through the air. Even the river of time had evaporated. An endless amount of Tao fragments flew into the air and rushed towards the broken universes. Miss Xian, Abyss, who was fighting against his opponent, frowned. He noticed the situation on Gu Xian side. You still have time to pay attention to others when you're fighting against me? You should worry about your own life first. His opponent was a figure who looked like an alien race. He did not reveal his true form, and there was a mocking expression on his flat face. They stood in an unworldly land, lawless and lawless. The shockwaves from their fight could give birth to the power of worlds' birth and destruction. When they fought, they could see the evolution of the great world and the collapse of the great universe. Light washed over the entire river of time, shining from ancient times until now. This could no longer be described as a Tao spell or divine ability. It was already an unpredictable and unfathomable power. It could create a world, but it could also destroy it. The world in front of them seemed complete. But in truth, in the eyes of those in Tao realm, it had already been born and destroyed countless times. Abyss sighed. Although Gu Xian was in danger, he did not have the time to care about other things. He was held back by his opponent and could not help. Xian, don't force yourself. When it's time to save your life, it's most important. The big red bird flapped its wings. As the artifact spirit of Gu Xian former weapon, it did not have much power now and could not help her at this time. When it saw the two immortal kings charging at it with full power again, it was also very anxious and worried. Gu Xian ignored it. He tried to condense the light of a quasi-immortal emperor while dodging the opponent's attacks. The great universe trembled, quickly collapsing. Under the attacks of the immortal kings, it was quickly torn apart. I got it. You little girl, don't tell me you want to risk your life to force Gu Chang out? At this time, the big red bird seemed to have suddenly thought of something, shouting out loudly. Gu Xian was just about to bring out the Tao sword, release an ultimate strike, but her figure almost staggered. She really couldn't stand this chattering big red bird anymore. Her delicate and fair fists clenched, wanting to throw it away. Shut up. I have the ability to deal with these two enemies. I don't need that fella to save me. However, you seem to have reminded me. Gu Xian scolded it softly and then muttered to it in a low voice. Even when facing this type of danger, she still didn't truly feel any worry about retreating. Realm shaking shadowless. Immediately afterwards, she took a deep breath, her eyes calm. A drop of blood that carried resplendent radiance flew out from between her brows, landing on the Tao sword she always held. A terrifying ray of light rushed into the sky, wanting to tear apart the world. She did not hesitate. The Tao sword she brought out swung out once again. It let out clanging sounds, as if it wanted to turn the world upside down. At that moment, endless shadows of swords appeared beside her. They were not illusions, but were formed by the ultimate law of the Tao of Sword. In an instant, countless flying swords moved about freely in the great universe. Some were as red as blood, some were yellow like the morning sun, some were blue like the ocean, some were like the sun, some were like the brilliant moon. Countless shadows of swords slashed down like long arcs that could destroy the universe. They were densely packed together, endless, and turned into a universe of swords. Why did she suddenly become so much stronger? The expressions of the two immortal kings who were chasing after her changed at that moment. They did not expect that the girl would have such a method. The war in Tao Chang True World swept through all universes and worlds from the vast expanse battlefield. Practically no races were spared, and they were all fighting against each other. At that moment, in the headquarters of the Heaven Crusher Alliance, on an island surrounded by rising rays of light and surging immortal aura, Wang Wushang, sat cross-legged on the island. The dazzling light of a quasi-immortal emperor appeared in his sea of consciousness, and his entire person seemed to have undergone some sort of shocking change. The devastating war in the world outside did not seem to affect him at all. The more people who die in this war, the better. When the time comes, I'll come and clean up the mess. I can use the power of the fragmented souls who died to restore the life force of the Abyss Defiance. It's about time that the great show of possession of Dao Chang True world begins. Wang Wushang was Anai-Chen. He looked at the scene in the sky without joy or sorrow on his face. He did not participate in the war. That was not all. There were many presences comparable to immortal kings lying in wait on the island. There were also several quasi-immortal emperors guarding the island. Even if the great army of the immortal spirit civilization arrived, they could fight against them without fear. As a Dao child of the Heaven Crusher Alliance, he had roped in many races over the years, and there was no lack of super elites who surpassed immortal kings among them. Unfortunately, there was no one comparable to Dao Realm by his side as of then. However, the war of the immortal spirit civilization's invasion of Dao Chang True World was the best opportunity for Anai-Chen. The secrets of the universe were in chaos at the moment, and all the powerful warriors were fighting against their enemies. Even Guowang and the others did not have the time to care about other things. So how could they notice his small actions? He already had the power of a quasi-immortal emperor. As long as he completely possessed this true world, his power would jump to the level of Dao Realm. At that time, he would be equivalent to the new true spirit of Dao Chang True World, and the power he could bring out in this true world would be even greater. After the war, both the Dao Chang True World and the power of the immortal spirit civilization would definitely not be at their peak. With the unique innate talent of the Abyss Defiance, Anai-Chen could definitely seize the chance to possess and refine the other existences in Dao Realm. As long as he could successfully take over a person's body, his advantage would snowball like a rolling snowball. At that time, I will be invincible in this true world. Anai-Chen's eyes were filled with ambition. At that moment, his nascent divinity spread out like fog. In an instant, it covered 1,000,000 lis. While the chaos was going on, it started spreading in all directions. The arrangements he had made over the years were starting to come into effect.